Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Maria Luisa Cedeno. On July 18, 2020, Maria Luisa Cedeno arrived at the Lamb Mission Inn Hotel in Manuel Antonio, in the Costa Rican province of Puntarenas. She was traveling with her little dog named Mofolda, it she treated like a daughter. The first day passed without incident. Maria Luisa went to the beach, had lunch at a restaurant, and drank some alcohol, activities common for tourists. However, the following day, everything changed. At 4:30 p.m. sharp, Maria requested that a bottle of wine, mineral water, and 2 glasses be brought to her room. It's worth noting that she didn't mention being with anyone, and everyone around her was convinced that she wanted to rest alone. Throughout the entire afternoon and night, no movement was recorded in her room. On July 20th, the hotel staff tried to contact her, but they received no response. A staff member had previously spoken with Maria, who mentioned that she lived alone because she had recently separated from her boyfriend, was not feeling well, and was only traveling with her small dog, Mofolda. Since several months had passed since the official start of the pandemic, Maria said that this had also affected her mental health, which was deteriorating. Considering everything she had been through, she said she needed a vacation. Therefore, the hotel staff decided to enter the room to check regularly, in case of any unforeseen circumstances. The front door was locked from the inside, so they looked for another way in and checked the door leading to the patio. This room had an emergency exit for guests with pets. They had previously opened the patio door so the dog could go outside. When the staff approached this exit, they found the door half open. Upon entering, they were hit by a terrible odor and saw blood stains throughout the room. The dog was alive, trembling in a corner and avoiding the staff, likely due to trauma or fear. The lifeless body of Maria was found lying motionless on the bed, wrapped in a sheet. Maria Luisa Cedeno was a highly respected anesthesiologist. At 43, she led the Department of Anesthesiology and Rehabilitation at SEMA Hospital in Escazú. Her colleagues admired her greatly, and during the early pandemic, she was notably committed to helping patients in need. As a medical professional, she provided significant support to her loved ones, arranging health insurance, assisting with medical appointments. Maria's parents lived in San Carlos, which made it difficult for her to be with her family all the time. Friends described her as a strong, intelligent, and likable woman who loved traveling both within Costa Rica and internationally. Her reputation was impeccable. The news of Maria's death was a tremendous shock to her family and Costa Rica. People were left asking, who would want to harm someone like Maria? From the moment the hotel staff discovered the lifeless Maria body, the mysteries of this case began. The crime scene is confusing, not only because of the brutality Maria endured, but also because of the mysteries that arise as soon as they enter the hotel room she rented. Like most hotels worldwide, this hotel keeps a record of the magnetic keys used for the rooms. This means that each time a room is accessed, the card used is recorded, and the key's code is identified. This system allows they to determine whether the person accessing the room was a guest or a hotel employee. In Maria's murder, there was no record of any other keys being used other than hers. Maria had entered her room alone the previous night, with no one else entering through the main door. However, the room had a sliding glass door at the back that could be used as an alternative entry point. Since this door could only be locked from the inside, it is possible that Maria left the door unlocked, either intentionally letting someone in or accidentally leaving the door open. This allowed someone to enter and commit the murder. As the door didn't have an electronic lock system, there was no record of anyone entering or exiting through it. This was considered the most logical explanation at the time. After discovering Maria's body, hotel staff immediately contacted the police. Upon examining the scene, it was clear that she had been brutally murdered. Her body showed severe damage, indicating that she had been tortured by someone who was extremely enraged. Forensic experts collected evidence and analyzed every detail to determine the cause of death and identify the perpetrator. The authorities recommended a closed casket at the funeral due to the extreme level of brutality inflicted upon Maria. An autopsy was later performed, which showed that the body had multiple bite marks and 2 broken fingernails, indicating that Maria attempted to defend herself. The autopsy also revealed that the killer cleaned the she-body after the murder. According to the investigator, Maria was killed in the bedroom, as evidenced by the large amount of blood found on the bed. The killer then moved the body to the bathroom, washed and dried it, wrapped it in a sheet, and placed it back on the bed. Although the killer attempted to wash the Maria body to eliminate evidence, this proved nearly impossible due to the extensive presence of blood throughout the room. Blood stains were found on the floor, walls, curtains, and bed, indicating the brutality of the attack. The forensic experts took photographs and collected as much physical evidence as possible from the scene. The body was then sent for an autopsy, and the police started interviewing the hotel staff and guests who may have witnessed or heard something. Given the state of the crime scene, it is likely that Maria screamed violently and her dog barked loudly during the attack. However, no one reported hearing any screams throughout the night. The hotel was relatively empty, but there were still a few people working at the hotel, and the hotel owner, Harry Bowden, who lived there with his husband Dano, were also present there. Additionally, Harry had allowed some acquaintances to stay at the hotel due to their financial difficulties. A bottle of wine and 2 glasses were found in Maria's hotel room. The wine had been ordered from room service. Later, investigators examined Maria's cell phone and found that she had sent a photo of the 2 glasses to a friend. However, the message did not indicate that she was with someone or she was waiting for someone to come to her room. She also sent an audio message to the same friend describing the hotel's all-inclusive package and its benefits. Maria seemed pleased with the service, mentioning that staff would bring her drinks, fruit, and other treats. She also mentioned interacting with hotel staff, including the bartender and hotelier's assistant, and noted that the owner was Dutch. Although she acknowledged the hotel is a bit worn out and understaffed, she expressed her overall satisfaction with her stay. The room cost 155,000 colons per night. Authorities investigating Maria's murder spoke with her friends and relatives to identify suspect. They discovered that she often ordered 2 glasses, even when alone, to have 1 for alcohol and 1 for water. This suggested she wasn't waiting for anyone at the time of the attack. The investigation revisited the initial theory: the attacker must have been someone who saw Maria in the hotel, noticed the back door was open and attacked her. However, the extreme brutality of the crime suggests that the killer had deep hatred and anger towards the victim, and often the killer knew the victim. Even so, there is no evidence that Maria was with anyone or had enemies at the time of her death. The autopsy revealed additional details about Maria's death, including signs of strangulation, blows to her face, arms, and chest, and evidence of abuse. After analyzing the autopsy results, conducting interviews with family, friends, and hotel staff, authorities concluded that the attack was likely carried out by multiple individuals. This theory was based on the fact that there were no reports of Maria screaming during the attack. Authorities believed that at least 2 attackers were involved, and they took complete control of Maria. Some investigators even suggested that a 3rd person may have been involved, as the victim showed signs of abuse. According to this theory, 2 assailants held Maria Luisa down and a 3rd raped her. All of this is evidenced by the fact that when her body was analyzed, there was no sign of rope or anything to indicate that she was tied up. Police speculated that the men may have stuffed something into Maria's mouth to stop her from screaming or to prevent her screams from being heard, in order to carry out the attack undetected. The cause of death was determined to be a head injury, which could have occurred in several ways. It might have been caused by a violent blow to the head, by being undressed, as there was evidence of fractured vertebrae, or by being hit with an object or falling heavily to the floor. Overall, what the assailants did to Maria was an atrocity, and without clear motivation. The first suspect was quickly identified because this man, who was staying at the hotel, had numerous fresh wounds resembling scratches and blows, suggesting he had been defending himself. Upon investigation, it was revealed to be Teodoro Herrera Martinez, an exotic dancer working in the city's nightclubs and staying at the hotel at the time of the murder. Teodoro was arrested when authorities were looking for evidence that he was involved in the murder. The man's footprints were compared to those at the crime scene. 2 matching prints were found on the black ceramic tile floor in front of the bed in the bedroom. A short time later, a second suspect named Luis Carlos Miranda was arrested. A hotel security guard had seen him walking in the hallways at night with Teodoro. Because Torreira was already in custody, Luis needed to be questioned to check for any links to the case. Additionally, tests revealed that his dental records matched the bite marks on Maria's body. Hotel employees testified that they saw Maria talking to Luis and, on one occasion, to Teodoro. However, their interactions were casual, like simple greetings, rather than those of acquaintances or friends. This might be because there were very few guests at the hotel, so they may have passed each other many times. Earlier, the hotel owner allowed 2 friends, Luis and Teodoro, to stay on the property due to financial difficulties. The police decided to question the owner of the hotel, Harry Bowden, after finding matching footprints and bite marks from the 2 suspects, Luis and Teodoro. During questioning, Harry revealed that on the night of the murder, July 19, 2020, he and husband were having dinner in their apartment within the hotel with Luis and Teodoro. After dinner, the 4 men went to a private pool. Harry also disclosed that Luis and Teodoro worked for him in exchange for accommodation. Luis managed the website and marketing, while Teodoro worked as a cook and bartender. The hotel owners and Luis and Teodoro were not close friends initially, but after moving into the hotel a year before the murder, they started spending more time together, going out for meals and socializing. And thus, the 4 men became friends. Although Harry cooperated by giving an interview in August 2020, but he was arrested because bite marks found on Maria's body matched his dental records, which began to reveal the truth. The police confiscated the phones of all the detainees and found text messages between Luis and Harry that turned out to be very compromising. In these messages, Luis invited Harry to have an intimate relationship with a woman he had been following. This exchange happened several days before the incident. However, Luis and Harry claimed that the messages didn't mean anything and that they were just joking, but that, along with the physical evidence, was enough for the authorities to keep them in jail while the case was being put together. The only person not arrested was Harry's husband. Because there was no evidence against him, no text messages, no fingerprints, and the bite marks didn't match those on Maria's body. Luis, Harry, and Teodoro's defense argued that the bite mark evidence was inconclusive and that none of them were involved in the murder. Despite this, the 3 men were charged with the murder of Maria. Before the trial, Harry's lawyer requested that he be released and placed under house arrest for 2 reasons. First, due to Harry being 69 years old, staying in jail was risky. Second, he had difficulty walking due to recent knee surgery. The defense claimed he had been using a cane for a long time, and at the trial's start, he appeared in a wheelchair. Because of this request, he was placed under house arrest and returned to the hotel where he was staying, and he couldn't leave the hotel. On September 13, 2022, the trial of Luis, Harry, and Teodoro began, where evidence against them was presented. The prosecution struggled to prove the involvement of Harry and Luis. They had text messages and bite marks on Maria's body as evidence. However, the bite marks couldn't definitively identify the murderer, they could only exclude suspects. All hotel employees were ruled out as suspects, but not these two, Harry and Luis. In contrast, Teodoro had the most evidence against him. There was a blood trail, and he had wounds inflicted by Maria during her self-defense, as his blood was found under her fingernails. Blood was also found on his shoes, watch, and cell phone, located in his room during the search. Given this evidence, only Teodoro Herrera Martinez was convicted and sentenced to 50 years in prison, while Harry Bowden and Luis Carlos Miranda were acquitted due to a lack of physical evidence. Many people believe that Luis and Harry were involved in the murder because the hotel security cameras mysteriously stopped working on the day it happened. This suggests that someone might have planned it. A hotel security guard was also suspected, but he and the other two individuals could not be arrested due to a lack of evidence. Strangely, the guard left for another country after the murder, even though the police asked him to attend the trial as a witness. There are several aspects of this case that suggest more people might be involved. For example, two guests told the police that the hotel experienced a power outage for many hours on the night of the murder, which may have been intentional. This could have been done to disable the security cameras and the magnetic keys. A peculiar detail is that 9 days after the murder, investigators searched Harry's private office, which may have given him enough time to destroy any evidence. They not only analyzed text messages but also looked at Luis and Harry's social media accounts, where they discovered discussions about an idea directly related to how to find Maria's body. Legally, Harry and Luis are presumed innocent. The only person in prison for this murder is Teodoro Herrera Martinez, who is awaiting a new trial to see if his sentence can be reduced. Although the case is solved, but the Maria family suspects something is being hidden. They suspect a defense or cover-up. The family reported that the authorities returned Maria's belongings soaked in blood, which they find puzzling because they wanted to preserve the evidence in case new information emerged. They are satisfied with Teodoro's conviction but not with the acquittal of Harry and Luis. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Michelle Hadley. Michelle Hadley was born on December 20th, 1986 in Upland, California. Michelle was the eldest daughter of her parents who were business owners. She grew up with a sister who's 3 years younger than her. Michelle was raised in a strict conservative home and shared a close relationship with her parents. Growing up, she had a pretty normal life. During her time at school and college, her friends knew her as a polite and kind person. Michelle was known for speaking her mind and addressing conflicts directly. Since childhood, she had been diligent in completing tasks, a trait that continued throughout her high school years. In high school, Michelle was in a long-term relationship with a single person whose identity remains unknown. The relationship led to marriage in 2008, but 4 years later, the marriage began to unravel. They decided to separate, which left Michelle heartbroken and questioning her ability to find love again. However, in 2013, she met Ian Diaz, a man she met through a dating site. Ian, who was working as a deputy U.S. Marshal at the time, was attentive and loving, drawing Michelle in. They eventually moved in together in the fall of 2014. Ian proposed to Michelle, and they set a wedding date. Initially, their marriage seemed perfect, but over time, Ian's behavior changed dramatically. Michelle had always seen Ian as a kind and attentive partner, but he slowly became loathing and abusive. At first, Michelle struggled to recognize these changes, mistaking them for acts of love. Ian began making requests that made Michelle uncomfortable, such as asking her to wear more revealing clothes. Despite her conservative upbringing, Michelle complied with his demands. Too easily, Ian made increasingly provocative demands. He asked her to get her navel pierced, and she finally agreed. Ian's requests became more bizarre and controlling. He asked Michelle to quit her job at a marketing firm, which she loved, and take a job at Disneyland, a place he had worked at before becoming a deputy U.S. Marshal. Ian claimed he wanted Michelle to be in a safer environment, but in reality, he wanted to keep a close eye on her every move, using his connections at Disneyland to monitor her activities. Michelle was initially taken aback by her husband's unusual request, but she wanted to make him happy, so she agreed to go along with it. However, as time passed, Michelle began to feel uneasy about the situation and realized she was changing into someone she wasn't. She thought about discussing her concerns with her husband, but when she tried to talk to him, he became defensive and abusive. Around this time, Michelle and her husband, Ian, decided to buy a condo together. They thought owning a place would strengthen their relationship. This was about 2 years after they met in 2015. After searching, they found a condo in downtown Anaheim that they loved, but it was a bit pricey at $470,000. Although it was a stretch for their budget, they wanted the condo. What Michelle didn't know at the time was that Ian had no intention of contributing to the mortgage payments. Michelle and Ian had been experiencing relationship problems, but things took a turn for the worse when they bought a condo together. Ian claimed he was having financial difficulties and couldn't contribute to the down payment, which was $144,000 in cash. Michelle paid the entire amount and also made the mortgage payments, despite both their names being on the deed. Their relationship continued to deteriorate, and one incident turned violent, with Ian raising his hand to Michelle, causing her slight injuries. She drafted an email to her sister about the abuse but never sent it. By the summer of 2015, Michelle decided to leave the condo and move in with her parents. However, she was still responsible for paying the mortgage, which Ian continued to neglect. This enraged Michelle, especially since she had left her high-paying job and was working at Disneyland for less pay. When Michelle tried to contact Ian about the missed mortgage payments, he ignored her emails, calls, and texts. This lack of response pushed Michelle to her limit, and she decided to confront Ian directly. Ian revealed that he had no intention of paying the mortgage on the condo he shared with Michelle. This admission enraged Michelle, who was already struggling with the situation. She sent Ian a strongly worded email, warning him that his behavior would have serious consequences. Ian responded by filing a restraining order against Michelle, but the police did not fully support his claim, as he was also at fault. When Michelle discovered Ian's restraining order request, she countered with evidence that he had never paid the mortgage on their jointly owned condo. They eventually agreed to hire property lawyers to resolve the issue. The court ultimately ruled in Michelle's favor, ordering Ian to pay the outstanding mortgage balance and imposing an additional penalty if he failed to comply. Ian was upset by the judgment but was forced to abide by the court's decision. The dispute took a year to resolve, and by 2016, Michelle and Ian had separated for good. Michelle was finally free from the toxic relationship, while Ian was left. He was still living in the condo and paying the mortgage, which had taken a significant toll on him. In an effort to move on, Ian started using dating apps again, which is how he met Angela Connell. Although little is known about Angela, it is known that she was born in 1985 in Phoenix, Arizona, attended a Catholic high school, and graduated from Arizona State University in 2006. Ian and Angela met in January 2016, and their connection was immediate. Within a month, Ian proposed, and Angela moved into his condo. Everything seemed perfect for they. By May 2016, Angela was pregnant with twins, and Ian was overjoyed. However, their happiness was short-lived. Angela received an anonymous email that read, "You're not the right person for Ian." The message shook Angela, and she couldn't help but think of her ex, Jason Rayburn, with whom she had a tumultuous relationship before meeting Ian. But there was one problem: Angela had cut off all contact with Jason after their breakup, so it seemed impossible for him to know about her new relationship with Ian. The email's origin and intentions remained a mystery. Ian and Angela were still living in the condo that Michelle had purchased. One day, Ian brought up the topic of the condo in a conversation with Angela, and she suddenly realized that Michelle might be the one who had sent her an anonymous email. Shortly after, Angela started receiving more emails from 6 different accounts, all with the same message but worded differently. Curious about the sender's identity, Angela replied to one of the emails and asked who was behind them. To her surprise, the response claimed to be from Michelle. Angela told Michelle to stop contacting her, but the emails continued. The next few emails Angela received made her feel threatened and worried for her safety. Fearing for her life, Angela decided to take action and filed a restraining order against Michelle on June 1, 2016. In her statement to the police, Angela explained that Michelle's emails had filled her with fear and anxiety. She was afraid to leave her home because of the threats and was worried that she might be attacked and killed if she stepped outside. The court took Angela's concerns seriously and immediately granted the restraining order against Michelle. In June 2016, Michelle appeared to have moved on from her past relationship. One evening, she met a friend and was returning home when she was met by a team of police officers in her driveway. Michelle was taken aback but cooperated with the officers and was taken in for questioning regarding the restraining order. During the interrogation, Michelle was questioned about her connection to Angela and the threatening emails sent from her email address. Michelle claimed she had never heard of Angela and was unaware of the emails. She also stated that she believed she was being set up, as she had recently received alerts from Google and Microsoft indicating that her email address had been compromised. Specifically, her email address had been shut down, and she had been notified that it was being used as a recovery email for multiple unknown email accounts. Michelle suspected that her ex-husband might be impersonating her and had reported her concerns to the Anaheim Police Department. However, the police officers did not take her claims seriously. Despite Michelle's denials, she was served with a restraining order. Unbeknownst to Michelle, this was only the beginning of a more complex situation. Shortly after, Angela started receiving emails responding to a Craigslist ad that she had not posted. The ad contained details soliciting a sexual coercion fantasy, which shocked Angela. She realized that someone must have created an account in her name, as the emails contained her exact personal details, including her phone number, condo address, and the breed of her dog. The only people who knew her condo's exact address were Ian and Michelle. Angela's fear resurfaced as she pondered the idea that the Craigslist ad might not have been Ian's doing. She became terrified, unwilling to leave her house, knowing that the perpetrator was aware of her address. The feeling of being constantly watched and not knowing who was responsible made her extremely uneasy. Days after the incident, on June 24, 2016, Angela was attacked. She was left with a bruised neck, ripped clothes, and a head injury from being slammed against the wall. Despite her condition, Angela managed to call 911. When the police asked if she recognized her attacker, Angela identified the person as Michelle. The police decided to take a stronger approach with Michelle and arrested her, as they believed a restraining order was not enough to prevent her from harming Angela. While in jail, Michelle managed to inform her parents about her arrest. Her parents, who were from a conservative background and were successful business owners, took immediate action to handle the situation. Michelle's bail was set at $10,000, which her parents were able to pay, securing her release. After Michelle's release, Angela began receiving harassing emails again. Although it seemed unlikely, the emails were actually sent from Michelle's personal email address. This raised questions about Michelle's involvement in the harassment. In another incident on July 13th, Angela contacted 911 after seeing a man standing outside her condo. When the police arrived, the stranger claimed to be responding to a sexually explicit Craigslist ad posted in Angela's name. The police investigated the origin of the ad and found that it led back to Michelle. This discovery raised more questions. Was Michelle lying to the police, or was someone else using her name to post the ad? The day after Michelle's second arrest on July 14th, the police set her bail at a staggering $1 million, an amount her parents couldn't afford to pay. Michelle strongly denied sending the threatening emails and creating the Craigslist ads, and her parents believed her, knowing she wasn't capable of such behavior. They decided to hire a lawyer, suspecting that whoever was behind the threats could continue to have Michelle arrested. During Michelle's second stint in jail, the threats and emails targeting Angela stopped again. 3 months passed, and it seemed like the situation had finally calmed down for Angela. Meanwhile, Michelle's parents were working tirelessly to uncover the identity of the person impersonating their daughter. To get to the bottom of the mystery, they needed to find out who had access to Michelle's records. After gathering data from her school, hospital, and other records, they discovered crucial evidence. It turned out that Michelle had been hospitalized in June, on the same day the first emails were sent. This revelation made it clear that Michelle couldn't have sent those emails herself. Michelle's parents were given new hope when they received information that led them to believe their daughter was innocent. Michelle's father took matters into his own hands and downloaded software to track the IP addresses of the threatening emails, which were encrypted and difficult to trace. On September 30th, 2016, Ian appeared at the police station and presented the bail, securing Michelle's release. Michelle and her family were shocked and confused by Ian's actions, and they couldn't understand why he would bail her out after treating her poorly in the past. They wondered if Ian had suddenly developed a conscience or if there was more to the story. After Michelle's release, Ian revealed a shocking truth. He claimed that Angela had framed Michelle for sending the threatening emails. According to Ian, Angela had created proxy email addresses in Michelle's name and used them to send threatening emails to herself. This revelation raised more questions than answers, and Michelle and her family were left to wonder why Angela would do such a thing. Angela went so far as to post Craigslist ads pretending to be Michelle. These ads included personal details that only Ian and Angela would know. Further, Angela inflicted bruises on herself in June 2016, claiming someone had attacked her in her garage. However, Ian later found CCTV footage revealing the truth. Angela had self-inflicted the injuries. Ian discovered a history of Angela fabricating stories and making things up from the start of their relationship. Angela's deceit went so far as faking her pregnancy. She had even purchased a sonogram photo and positive pregnancy test. Ian investigated further to determine the root cause of Angela's obsessive and hurtful actions against Michelle. Angela became aware of Michelle after meeting Ian in 2015, where Michelle and Ian came up frequently. As a result, Angela developed curiosity and eventually resentment toward Michelle after looking into Michelle's personal background, including the affluent community from which she hailed. Angela's discovery led her to view Michelle as a lucrative target. Meanwhile, Ian, Michelle's husband, harbored a deep-seated resentment towards Michelle due to a past condo dispute. The incident had left Ian fuming, particularly because he was forced to pay the mortgage after Michelle's countersuit. Seeking revenge, Ian and Angela formed an alliance to bring Michelle down. Ian provided Angela with Michelle's email address, and they began secretly plotting to frame Michelle and have her arrested. To conceal their scheme, they created multiple email addresses to communicate with each other. Using virtual private networks, VPNs, they created 6 fake accounts in Michelle's name. Unbeknownst to Michelle, these accounts were the source of the Google alerts she had reported to the police, which were actually created by Angela. When Michelle obtained a restraining order, Angela was dissatisfied, as her goal was to completely eliminate Michelle. In response, Angela devised a more elaborate plan. She created a fake Craigslist profile using Michelle's identity and posted an ad inviting men to her home for a sexual coercion fantasy. However, the inconsistencies in their plan ultimately led Ian to confess, inadvertently framing his own wife in the process. He was seemingly oblivious to the extent Angela would go far once the truth was out. The police obtained a search warrant for all of Angela's devices, and what they found was astonishing. The investigation revealed that all of Ian's claims were true. They discovered 21 threatening emails, most of which were sent from Angela and Ian's condo. Further investigation into the origins of the emails supposedly sent to Angela revealed that some were sent from Arizona. It was discovered that Angela had traveled to Arizona to visit her father during that time. The investigation into Angela's background began after these shocking discoveries. It was then that investigators found out that this was not the first time Angela had committed such an act. In 2013, Angela had committed similar crimes while dating Jason Rayburn, a state trooper from California. During their relationship, Angela claimed to be an attorney and said she had been diagnosed with cervical cancer. However, as time passed, Jason became suspicious as Angela's claims did not add up. He started digging deeper and was shocked to discover that Angela had fabricated both her cancer diagnosis and her career. On January 6, 2019, nearly 3 years after the truth came to light, Angela was arrested and charged for her crimes. The Orange County District Attorney's Office worked to clear Michelle's name, and 3 days later, her record was officially cleared of the false charges of making a threat to life and assault. As a result of the ordeal, Michelle had to drop out of her MBA program and lost her job. However, now that her name has been cleared, she is rebuilding her life. She has since completed her MBA and found a job in field marketing for a cosmetics company. Michelle has also moved to New York to start fresh and be closer to her sister. In contrast, Angela pleaded guilty to 10 felonies, including false imprisonment and perjury, and was sentenced to 5 years in prison. Ian, who was involved with Angela, has since separated from her and sold their condo for $500,000. In 2021, Ian faced multiple charges for allegedly masterminding a plot to frame Michelle. In addition to receiving a 5-year prison sentence, he was charged with 1 count each of perjury, cyberstalking, and conspiracy to commit cyberstalking. This raises questions about the thoroughness of the initial investigation. If the investigators and police officers had scrutinized the situation more closely, perhaps the plot would not have progressed as far as it did. Hello, crime enthusiasts. Are you ready for another chilling investigation? The case of Michelle Avila. Michelle Yvette Missy Avila was born on February 8, 1968, in Arleta, Los Angeles. She grew up in a family with a mother and 3 brothers. Michelle attended San Fernando High School with 2 of her close friends, Karen Severson and Laura Doyle. However, their friendship began to deteriorate when they entered high school. Thanks to her beauty and popularity, Michelle attracted a lot of attention from her peers, especially boys. Michelle's prominence made Karen and Laura increasingly jealous. Afterwards, a false rumor spread that Michelle had been involved with several guys who were already in relationships. This malicious gossip incited violence against Michelle outside of school. The assault was so serious that when she returned home, her parents immediately charged the ringleader of the assault, Sonia Bon, and took her to court. Michelle was scheduled to testify against Sonia in court on October 8, 1985, but unfortunately, she never got the chance. This was due to a series of events that took place in early September. A rumor that had been circulating for a year, accusing Michelle of having had an affair with her friend's boyfriend, resurfaced and caused a rift between Michelle and her best friends, Karen and Laura. The tension started when Michelle started dating a guy named Randy during their senior year. However, Michelle ended the relationship after only a month due to Randy's constant partying. Not long after the breakup, Karen started dating Randy and the two moved in together. Despite his relationship with Karen, Randy still had feelings for Michelle, which Karen discovered when she saw him flirting with Michelle. Michelle rejected Randy's advances, making it clear that she was not interested in rekindling their affair. Michelle advised Karen to reconsider her relationship with Randy and find someone better. Karen was furious, and Karen and Laura decided to confront Michelle at a neighboring park, causing rumors to spread once again. Michelle tried to reason with Karen and Laura, explaining that she would never betray their trust and that these were just false rumors from the previous year. Witnesses said Karen yelled at Michelle, threatened her with a broken beer bottle, pushed her to the ground, and slapped her before leaving with Laura. This encounter occurred just 10 days before Michelle was murdered. After the incident, Laura apologized to Michelle, and they decided to put their conflicts aside. However, Karen did not apologize to Michelle until October 1st, when she finally apologized for her reaction to Michelle. Michelle was grateful for the apology because she missed her friends so much. The three friends then made plans to meet at Stonehurst Park later that day. On October 1st, 1985, Michelle told her mother that she was going out with friends and was allowed to go on the condition that she be home by 6 p.m. Michelle waited outside for Laura to pick her up. When Laura arrived, they drove around a bit before arriving at Stonehurst Park, where they parked and waited for Karen to arrive. A few minutes had passed, and Karen had driven into the parking lot with another friend named Eva, who had been sitting in the passenger seat. As soon as Karen had arrived, she had driven her car very close to Laura's car and had rolled down the window. She had started shouting at Laura, who had rolled down her window and yelled back. Michelle and Eva had watched in amazement as their friends had angrily insulted each other, but Michelle had had no idea what the argument had been about. The situation had quickly escalated as Karen had backed away and sped off, with Laura following closely behind. They had driven recklessly for 45 minutes, heading north of the city and into the mountains. Michelle and Eva had begged them to calm down and stop, but Karen and Laura had been too angry to listen. Finally, they had turned into a parking lot that had led to a forest. Laura and Karen had gotten out of the car and continued their argument. Michelle had gotten out of the car hoping to intervene and stop the fight. However, as soon as they had stepped outside, Laura and Karen had suddenly stopped arguing and had turned their attention to Michelle. They had rushed towards her, leaving Michelle wondering what would happen next. Michelle had tried to get in the car, but Karen and Laura had been standing too close, leaving her trapped. They hadn't fought physically with her, but they had been angry with Michelle. Karen and Laura had told Michelle that they had staged the entire drama to lure her into the woods, where they could confront her. Karen and Laura had accused Michelle of sleeping with their boyfriends and had revealed that it had been they who had started the rumors. Karen and Laura had shouted at Michelle, refusing to listen to her explanation. When Michelle had become confused, Karen and Laura had grabbed her, pulled her out of the car, and had forced her to follow a nearby trail into the woods. Michelle had been much smaller than the other two girls, which had left her defenseless against Karen and Laura, who had continued to push her further down. Eva had remained in the car during the initial altercation, but had eventually gotten out and followed the group at a distance. She hadn't participated in the events that had taken place in the forest and hadn't been sure why she had been there. The group had continued into the woods, out of sight from the parking lot. When they had gone far enough, Laura had stopped and turned back to Michelle, who had been crying fearfully. Laura had then punched Michelle in the face. Karen had quickly joined in, and within seconds, Michelle had been on the ground, beaten and trampled. The attack had temporarily stopped when Laura had pulled out her knife. Grabbing Michelle's hair, she had begun cutting out sections of hair. Karen had wanted to participate, so she had started pulling Michelle's hair with her hands because she hadn't had a knife. Meanwhile, Eva had watched what had happened without doing anything to intervene. After cutting and pulling Michelle's hair, Laura and Karen had used rope to tie Michelle's hands behind her back and gagged her. A nearby river had caught Laura's attention, and she had stepped into the shallow water, smiling tauntingly at Michelle and daring her to enter. When Michelle hadn't moved, Karen had helped her up, forced her toward the river, and pushed her. Michelle had fallen down the hill, her face hitting the ground, rolling towards the river with her hands tied. Laura and Karen grabbed the girl and pulled her into the water. Eva had witnessed this and had run back up the driveway. However, when she had approached the cars, she had discovered they were locked. Since Eva had been too far away to get help from others, she had started walking back down the trail. But when she had heard a terrifying scream, she had stopped walking, turned around, and had run back to her car. There, Eva had lain on the ground in the fetal position and had waited about an hour until she had seen Laura and Karen return, soaking wet and laughing. But to her alarm, they had no longer been with Michelle. Then they left the forest, got in the car with Eva, and returned home. After the incident, for hours later, Laura even called Michelle's mother and asked after her. Laura talked to Michelle's mother, Irene Avila, and made up a story about dropping Michelle off with 3 boys in a blue Camaro after getting gas. Laura claimed that when she returned, Michelle and the 3 boys were gone. On October 4, 1985, Michelle's body was found face down in a stream in Big Tahunva Canyon, in Angeles National Forest, by a group of hikers. They then informed the police. Upon arriving at the scene, police found that Michelle had been drowned in 8 inches of water. Her long hair was cut off and there was a 4-foot-long piece of wood lying on top of her. Police found cigarettes, beer, and men's overalls near where Michelle's body was discovered. Karen and Laura told Michelle's parents and detectives that before her disappearance, Michelle had been traveling with 3 men in a blue Camaro. This made the items around the scene seem more reasonable. This false information caused detectives to search for bogus men for 3 years. Irene Avila said she did not suspect Karen or Laura were involved in her daughter's death because they both attended Michelle's funeral. Laura sent the family a condolence card and $20. Meanwhile, Karen had been living with Michelle's family for a long time to show support and help catch the murderer. In reality, Karen just wanted to oversee the investigation and keep the detectives from suspecting her. She also slept in Michelle's bed and had dinner with her family many nights, while she herself had participated in Michelle's murder. Karen seemed haunted by the murder. She regularly visited Michelle's grave several times a week, covered her room's walls with photos of Michelle and newspaper clippings about the crime, and constantly visited the creek where Michelle's body was found. One time, Karen told Irene that she saw Michelle's ghost. Detectives had no leads and the case languished for 3 years. By July 26, 1988, Eva Carambolo, the girl who had unwittingly participated in Michelle's murder, finally decided to report everything to the police. She explained the rumors that had been circulating about Michelle, the disagreements between her, Laura, and Karen, their anger, their jealousy, and every detail of the murder she knew. It took Eva a long time to report the incident because she was threatened by Laura and Karen. They told her not to say anything about what she saw, and she feared they would kill her. Finally, in March 1990, Karen and Laura were convicted of second-degree murder and sentenced to life in prison with the possibility of parole after 15 years. The jury did not believe the murder was premeditated, so they rejected the first-degree murder charge. After serving 21.5 years, Karen was released from prison on December 9, 2011. Laura was also released from prison in December 2012 after serving 22 years. Karen attempted to write a memoir about the murder and her life in prison. However, the book did not achieve the expected success. She also planned to make a film about her story but faced opposition from Avila's family. This incident prompted the state of California to pass Missy's Law, requiring organizations that help publish criminals' works to contact victims' families about those works. Missy's story has sparked much debate about the impact of bullying, the complexities of teenage relationships, and the importance of fostering an environment of empathy and kindness. Michelle Yvette, Missy Avila's legacy will be one of resilience and hope. We hope that her memory will inspire us all to stand up against bullying, support those affected by betrayal, and work towards a future where understanding and empathy prevail. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Jennifer Cave. Jennifer Cave was born in March 1984 near Bishop, Texas, to a family living on a modest farm. Her mother, Sharon, remarried, and her father, Charlie, was a welder. He was a good husband and father, but alcohol turned him into a troublemaker. However, when he was sober, he was calm. Despite the family's ups and downs, they remained close. Sharon worked as an accountant at a chemical plant while raising her family. Jennifer, unlike her outgoing siblings, was quite shy. Jennifer loved reading, which helped her develop her intelligence and memory. Despite her lack of self-confidence, Jennifer was active in school sports and social activities. Her father's abusive drinking habits tore the family apart. After her parents divorced, Jennifer and Clayton lived with their father. They felt great sympathy for him and tried to comfort him. Jennifer wanted her father to stop drinking so much that she ignored the fact that he really didn't want to change. For years after the divorce, in 1999, her mother, Sharon, met a new man named Jim Sedgwick. When Jennifer entered her teens, she changed. She got her braces off, got new glasses, and her appearance became much better. Her personality changed along with her new look. She graduated at the top of her class thanks to her intelligence. Jennifer enrolled in Texas State University as a finance major, but quickly became discouraged and dropped out after her first semester. She then attended community college in Austin and worked part-time at a restaurant in the city to support herself. During this time, she dated Mark, a nice guy from a good family. Their relationship could have led to marriage, but Jennifer became addicted to the nightlife. She partied and drank frequently. Her time spent drinking increased, and along with her marijuana use, her bad habits gradually took over her life. Jennifer's life took a turn when she meets Colton Petoniak. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. Colton has a passion for skateboarding and playing the guitar. He attends an all-boys Catholic middle school in Little Rock, where he consistently excels academically and is often named honor roll student. In 2000, Colton was one of 7 seniors and one of 166 statewide finalists for the National Honor Society. During his senior year, he began to have problems with alcohol and violence. This was largely due to his involvement with a wealthy youth group. Colton Petoniak was born and raised in Bryant, Arkansas. During his youth, he was known as a smart, attractive boy who was popular with many girls. However, instead of focusing on his studies, he continued his debauched lifestyle. This led to him losing friends and becoming known for his addiction to alcohol and marijuana. He could have had a bright future if not for these self-destructive habits. After being expelled from his fraternity, he began to engage in illegal drug dealing. His family tried to support him through this, even bringing him back home to live with them. In the spring of 2004, Jennifer and Colton met at a party and immediately connected. Jennifer, always optimistic, decided to give their relationship a try, despite the risks involved. Over time, their friendship gradually developed into a romantic relationship. Jennifer began using drugs with Colton. Colton's luxury apartment became their regular hideout for illegal drug use. Jennifer's addiction became more serious. Her parents tried many times to help her get off drugs, even giving her a car in the hopes that she would come home more often. However, every time Jennifer came home, she failed to keep her promise to quit her addiction. During that time, Colton's condition also gradually worsened. He became paranoid and started carrying weapons to create the image of someone with a criminal record. In 2004, Colton was arrested for illegal drug possession. He later entered rehab. Elsewhere, Jennifer's relationship with her family deteriorated when her parents visited her. They were completely shocked to see that Jennifer had lost a lot of weight. Her image was no longer as healthy as before. Refusing the family's advice to go to a drug treatment center upset Jennifer's parents. Because of that, Sharon and her new husband, Jim, made the decision to stop supporting her financially. They hoped that because of that, she would make more efforts to get her life back. Jennifer did not have enough money to survive on her own, so she was forced to live with Colton. However, after a month of living together, she decided to leave due to some unexpected events. Fortunately, a friend helped her not only by providing a place to stay but also by providing emotional support. After a difficult time, Jennifer's life seemed to be back on track. In early 2005, she began a new relationship with a man named Scott, a nice single father. Scott's lifestyle was the complete opposite of Colton's. Scott worked at a restaurant, sang well, and maintained a healthy lifestyle. When she was with him, Jennifer felt better about herself and looked healthier. She took on the role of a housewife and became the ideal mother figure for his daughter. However, she was still ready to leave at any time if Colton called. On another hand, Colton moved to the Orange Tree apartment complex near the university, where there were parties every weekend. His image changed the views of the people who frequented the place. In addition, there were many healthy things. In the comfortable pace of life, he met Laura Ashley Hall. In contrast to Colton, Laura was infatuated with this man and often showed jealousy towards the other women in the group, especially Jennifer. Laura made a different impression on their friends, who wondered why she was so arrogant and often made fun of anyone. Laura, like Colton, also came from a well-off family. She was an active person, participated in many different activities, and was successful in her studies. After graduating from high school, she enrolled in college but soon dropped out, choosing instead a more comfortable job and lifestyle. Later, Laura and Colton began a romantic relationship. She was also deeply attracted to Colton, like Jennifer. However, Laura's friends noticed that she had changed for the worse, becoming more aggressive, neglecting her work, and not taking care of herself. Many suspected that she had also started using illegal drugs. Beside that, Jennifer entered a new chapter after ending her relationship with Scott. She felt that she did not fit in with his family and did not want to cause trouble. However, she still kept in touch with Colton, who was still deeply in love with her. Regarding their relationship, Jennifer just wanted to keep it as friends. She wanted to get a stable job and go back to college. In August, a new opportunity appeared in her life. She started a new romantic relationship with Michael Rodriguez and found a great job. At a law firm, she impressed everyone after her training and was offered a high-paying consultant position. She was proud of herself and felt truly happy. On August 16th, Jennifer decided to celebrate her new life with her friends. They went to a bar and then to a club. According to a friend, the bouncer at the club refused to let Colton in because of his appearance. This may have led him to turn to drugs. The investigation is still ongoing to shed light on the events that happened that fateful night. The next morning, Jennifer's boyfriend, Michael Rodriguez, checked his phone but found no calls from Jennifer. He recalled that she had promised to call him after dropping Colton off. Michael did not trust Colton's character and lifestyle and was concerned. Around the same time, Jennifer's roommate noticed that she had not come home the night before. The alarm clock was still going off, but no one had turned it off. This worried her roommates as they had a habit of informing each other about their plans. Jennifer's roommate tried to contact her but received no response, which was out of character for her. She was still scheduled to go to work that day, but her work clothes were still hanging on the rack, with no sign that she had put them on and left. This made her roommates even more worried because Jennifer was not the type to leave for work without informing them. The law firm was notified on the morning of August 17th that new employee Jennifer Cave had not arrived for work on time. This was unusual because she had made a good impression during her internship. When a colleague called her at 9 a.m., there was no answer. At 11 a.m., the firm decided to send someone to check Jennifer's home, but there was no answer. The firm contacted Jennifer's mother, Sharon Sedgwick, and discovered that she had also been unable to reach her daughter. The family suspected that Jennifer might have gotten back together with her ex-boyfriend Colton Petoniak, whom they did not like. After more than 12 hours without any news of Jennifer, Sharon reported her daughter missing to the police. The Sedgwicks visited Colton's home, but he refused to meet with them. Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home, making the situation even more suspicious. Although the police searched Jennifer's home and found nothing unusual, they are still investigating based on information from Michael and Sharon, along with the fact that Jennifer's car was found near Colton's home. Sharon and her new husband, Jim, believe that something serious has happened to their daughter. Michael said that Jennifer went out with friends on August 16th to celebrate her new job. One of her friends was her ex-boyfriend, Colton. Jennifer called Michael several times and told him that she wasn't scared but that Colton was acting strangely and that she needed to take him home. However, she did not contact Michael after that. All the clues led investigators to where Colton lived. While the police were still deciding what to do, Sharon and Jim decided to take action themselves. They went to Colton's house and knocked on the door, but no one answered. They sensed something was wrong and were about to call a locksmith to open the door. But Jim suddenly discovered an open window and decided to climb in through it. Once inside, he found the apartment in complete disarray. As soon as he entered, Jim was hit by a stench so bad it made him nauseous. He immediately covered his mouth and moved toward the stronger smell. Sure enough, the entire house was empty. And in the bathroom, Jim discovered a gruesome sight, a woman whose head and limbs had been cut off. Nearby, he also found some trash bags and a gym bag. Jim was horrified when he checked inside and discovered the victim's remaining body parts. The freckled legs looked very similar to his stepdaughter's. But the victim's body was so mutilated that it was difficult to identify. Still, Jim hoped the worst would be over for his daughter until the last minute. After calming down a bit, he immediately called an ambulance. Jennifer Cave met a tragic death from being shot in the right arm. The bullet went through her arm, chest, and into her heart, also damaging a major artery. This led to severe blood loss and caused her to die quickly. After that, her body went through incredible and terrifying changes. Forensic experts discovered 18 stab wounds on the victim's body, mainly in the chest and neck. The perpetrator inflicted these wounds after the victim was dead. He then decapitated the victim and shot a bullet through the throat into the head, intending to dismember the victim to easily dispose of the body. The perpetrator severed the victim's upper limbs and placed them in a prepared bag and a garbage bag. The body was left in the bathtub, covered with a saw. However, something thwarted his original plan, forcing him to change his course of action. After receiving a search warrant, the police conducted a thorough investigation of the apartment. Police found .38 caliber shell casings in the apartment. The murder weapon was found in Petoniak's car parked in the garage. They also found a large bloody machete in the dishwasher. Toxicology tests showed that the victim had alcohol, marijuana, and methamphetamine in his blood. A road atlas was found at the scene with pages torn out, marking routes in southwest Texas. This suggested that the apartment owner, Colton Petoniak, had fled. Police immediately issued a warrant for his arrest. Investigators conducted interviews with Colton's neighbors to gather information. Nora Sullivan, one of the neighbors, witnessed a suspicious incident at approximately 3 a.m. on August 17. When she opened the door, she found Colton standing there with blood on his body and a handgun in his waistband. Nora asked him what happened, and Colton said he had gotten into a gunfight with several people. However, Nora did not hear any gunshots that night and suspected he was lying. Investigators also discovered that Colton had contacted Laura twice that night, but did not have specific details about the conversation. On the morning of August 17, Colton went to a hardware store and purchased items such as a saw, mask, gloves, and cleaning supplies. He used these items to destroy Jennifer's body and planned to clean up the apartment to remove any traces of the crime. However, at that time, the couple Sharon and Jim unexpectedly appeared, possibly scaring Colton into running away, foiling his plan. While investigating Colton's apartment, investigators found a vital clue that led directly to him. He and Laura Hall were spotted in Mexico, where they had crossed the border in her car. Local authorities circulated Colton's photo nationwide during that time. The couple enjoyed their time going to movies and restaurants. They stayed at a hotel in the border town of Piedras Negras, where an employee recognized him as a wanted man. The employee took a photo of him and sent it to the police. Mexican law enforcement arrested the couple and took them to the border, where U.S. officials arrested them. Laura Hall was released from custody pending further investigation. On August 23, 2005, Colton was charged with the felony murder of Jennifer Cave. A month later, Laura Hall was arrested and charged with tampering with evidence and obstruction of justice. The prosecution presented evidence recovered from Colton's apartment, including a videotape from the store and receipts for the items purchased. Colton claimed he had no memory of the night of the crime due to amnesia caused by excessive alcohol and illegal drug use. He did not initially deny harming Jennifer, but insisted he had no memory. He claimed that he woke up to find his ex-girlfriend's body in the bathroom later that day. After discovering the body, he contacted Laura, who advised him to purchase a saw and cleaning supplies. She helped Colton dismember the victim and hide the parts in bags. The prosecution argued that Laura was responsible for Jennifer's injuries after her death. Colton later suggested that Laura may have been motivated by jealousy and implied that she was involved in the act of revenge. However, both defendants pleaded not guilty. But the evidence of Colton's responsibility was overwhelming. Jennifer's body was discovered in Colton's apartment. His fingerprints and DNA were found on items such as knives, saws, and guns collected at the crime scene. Colton's car also contained weapons related to the crime. He also purchased cleaning supplies from the store. The jury had no doubt about Colton's guilt. On January 29, 2007, Colton was sentenced to 55 years in prison, but could be eligible for parole after serving at least half of his sentence. This means Colton won't be released until 2060 at the earliest. The case against Laura Hall is more complicated. The prosecution argues that she may have acted out of blind love for Colton. Laura's DNA was found on one of the victim's shoes, a shop towel, and even the gun used. However, the defense argues that these traces only prove her involvement in dumping the body, not the initial act. They can't prove she fired the first shot. Laura claims she only learned about the case after Colton told her about it and that she was forced to flee to Mexico with him. However, witnesses to their time in Mexico said the couple seemed happy on the trip. In 2007, Laura was convicted of obstruction of justice and tampering with evidence, and sentenced to 6 years in prison. A subsequent trial in 2010 increased the sentence to 11 years in prison and a $144,000 fine. Laura was eventually released on parole on March 15, 2018, with GPS monitoring. She completed her sentence in August of that year. After her parole, Laura's whereabouts remain unknown. Colton Petoniak remains in prison after multiple unsuccessful appeals. In his appeals, Colton claims he has no memory of the events surrounding Jennifer's death. However, he asserts that several witnesses heard Laura confess to the crime and that the prosecution knowingly withheld this information from his defense team, potentially setting him up. Despite Colton's allegations, his appeals have been denied, raising public questions about the case. Jennifer's parents, however, firmly believe that Laura was more involved in the death than she admits and that her punishment was too lenient. Unlike Colton, Laura has shown no remorse or regret for Jennifer's death, referring to her in derogatory terms. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Paige Bergfeld. After high school, Paige attended the University of Florida's nursing school, where she met Howard Bigler. They started dating after realizing their mutual feelings for each other. After graduating with a nursing degree, Paige returned to Colorado to live with her family. In 1995, she and Howard got married. At first, they seemed like a happy couple, sharing many common interests and views. However, they had a significant disagreement that eventually led to their divorce. Paige wanted to have a child and start a family, but Howard didn't share her desire. This issue caused frequent arguments and discussions, but they couldn't find a compromise. In 1997, they decided to divorce. Despite this, they remained friends due to their strong connection. Paige later married Rob Dixon, but that marriage also ended in divorce. After her second divorce, Paige reconnected with Howard. He claimed to be one of the last people to see her alive. On the 28th, Howard and Paige, who were previously married, met in Eagle County, Colorado, to attend to personal matters. They spent Thursday together, after which they returned to their separate homes. Following their meeting, they continued to stay in touch through phone calls. Later, when Paige went missing, Howard quickly reached out to emergency services to report his concerns. During the call, he expressed his deep worry and belief that something terrible might have happened to her. Howard mentioned that Paige was a devoted mother who would never abandon her children without a valid reason. A recording of the call confirmed this, and cell tower data verified that Howard was in the Denver, Colorado area on the day Paige disappeared, which is a significant distance from where she was last seen. This evidence led the police to rule Howard out as a suspect. The investigation then focused on Paige's relationship with her second husband, Rob Dixon, and uncovered several suspicious incidents that required further investigation. Paige had previously reported her husband Rob to the police twice for harassment during their marriage. Before marrying Rob, Paige worked at a strip club in Denver, where she met him. Rob came from a wealthy family and had inherited a significant fortune. The two fell in love and got married in 1998. The couple settled in a luxurious home in Colorado, where Paige realized her dream of becoming a mother. Within a few years, they had 3 children who became the center of Paige's life. The early years of their marriage seemed happy, with the couple enjoying a luxurious lifestyle. However, things took a turn for the worse due to Rob's financial difficulties. Rob's family businesses faced severe issues, leading to a significant decline in their economic situation. As a result, Rob was forced to file for bankruptcy, which triggered a deep family crisis. By 2004, tensions had escalated to the point where Paige called emergency services twice. The first time, she reported that Rob had threatened to kill her and their children, but when the police arrived, they claimed to have resolved their issues. A year later, Paige reported Rob for assaulting her while she was holding their youngest child. Rob was arrested and charged with third-degree assault. He eventually pleaded guilty to 1 count of molestation, but the trial was dismissed and he avoided jail time. The couple's relationship continued to deteriorate, leading them to separate. Rob then moved to Pennsylvania. During the investigation into Paige's disappearance, Rob was interviewed to establish his alibi for that day. He claimed to have been at home and could not have harmed her. The investigators could not find any evidence to implicate Rob in her disappearance. In fact, Rob actively participated in the search for Paige. The investigating officers left no stone unturned in their effort to find clues and solve the mystery of the missing mother. The investigation into Paige's disappearance began with a thorough examination of her car. It was hoped that evidence in the car could help locate her or provide clues about what had happened. Sergeant Weiler of the County Sheriff's Department noted that arson is often used to destroy evidence, but in this case, the examination of the vehicle yielded valuable information. The driver's seat was found to be pushed back as far as it would go, indicating that the last person to drive the car was a tall individual, inconsistent with Paige's short stature. The trunk of the car contained Paige's notebook, with pages torn out from June 26 to June 29. As time passed, the search for Paige became increasingly urgent. A break in the case came when a driver stopped on a highway southeast of town to fix a flat tire and discovered a checkbook lying nearby. He reported it to the authorities, who then searched the area and found additional items belonging to Paige, including medical records and insurance cards. Sergeant Weiler's investigation into Paige Bergfeld's disappearance took a dramatic turn when he found a business card on the road, leading him to a shocking discovery. Paige was secretly working as an escort under the alias Carrie. This revelation completely upended the investigation, as it revealed a side of Paige's life that her loved ones knew nothing about. Previously, it was believed that Paige was a devoted mother who worked hard to provide for her children after her divorce. She had started her own children's clothing business, taught dance lessons, and sold kitchen supplies. Despite her busy schedule, she always made time for her children and was actively involved in their school activities. However, the discovery of the secret phone Paige used for her escort work revealed a completely different picture. This phone became a crucial piece of evidence, leading police to unravel a complex mystery that was far more sinister than anyone had initially suspected. The investigation into Paige's disappearance led to more questions than answers. What prompted a responsible mother and successful businesswoman to lead a secret life? And how was this double life connected to her vanishing? These questions took center stage in the investigation, adding a new layer of mystery. To get to the bottom of things, detectives analyzed Paige's cell phone, found in her car, and examined her contacts and calls from the hours leading up to her disappearance. The last call made from her phone was on June 28 around 9 p.m. This analysis led investigators to identify 7 suspects, one of whom was Lester Ralph Jones. Jones's criminal record raised red flags, particularly his history of violence against women and a previous kidnapping conviction that earned him a 5-year prison sentence. However, it wasn't the only concerning aspect. Jones's white car matched the description of the vehicle seen by Carol, Paige's friend. Carol shared a crucial detail with detectives. Paige had once approached her car, only to find a white car blocking her driveway. Enraged, Paige got behind the wheel to turn around, but the cars collided. The unknown driver quickly fled the scene. Investigators suspected that Lester might have been obsessed with Paige and was stalking her after discovering that he had tried to book an appointment with her for intimate services on the day before she vanished. When questioned, Lester denied any involvement in her disappearance and provided fingerprints and DNA samples. However, a search of his home turned up several incriminating items, including a prepaid phone, wigs, Viagra, a sheet with an escort services phone number, and women's lingerie in various sizes. The prepaid phone caught the investigators' attention due to suspicious calls made to Paige's phone on the day she disappeared. Lester initially denied owning a second phone, which proved to be a lie. Using the phone's packaging found at his home, police traced the purchase to a supermarket on North Avenue. The store's security footage showed Lester buying the phone, which he refused to acknowledge when confronted with the evidence. Lester Jones became the main suspect in Page's disappearance, but the police couldn't find enough concrete evidence to charge him. They continued to investigate and search for Page's body, hoping to find proof of his guilt. However, the case stalled for several years, leaving Page's family and loved ones in a state of unbearable grief. As time passed, the search seemed increasingly futile, and the hope of finding Page alive began to fade. In 2012, a hiker stumbled upon human remains in a ravine in Delta County, surprisingly close to where Page's personal belongings had been found 5 years prior. Investigators were nearly certain the body was that of a young mother, and DNA testing confirmed it was indeed Page. Unfortunately, her story ended in tragedy. The condition of the body made it impossible to determine the exact cause of death, but it was clear she had suffered a brutal beating with multiple broken bones, particularly in her face. It was concluded that her injuries ultimately led to her death. The discovery of Page's body added a horrific layer to the story. It's believed that her body was buried, but years of soil erosion eventually brought it to the surface, which may explain why it wasn't found sooner. The discovery led to a breakthrough in Lester Ralph Jones's case, which had stalled for years. In November 2014, he was charged with kidnapping, first-degree murder, and second-degree murder. The trial finally began in July 2016 and lasted 22 days. Prosecutors claimed that Lester's frustration over being unable to see Page, combined with his history of violence against women, motivated the crime. The prosecution's key witness, Lester's ex-wife Lisa, testified about his violent past. She described how Lester kidnapped and threatened to kill her at gunpoint in the late 1990s after she ended their relationship. On one occasion, he attacked her and her partner, shooting the latter in the head. A month later, Lester made another threat, warning her that she would be thrown into a lake. Lisa managed to escape and contacted the police, leading to Lester's arrest on charges of kidnapping and assault. In contrast, Lester's defense attorneys argued that the police had wrongly accused an innocent man and suggested that other clients of Page's may have had motives for the crime. However, they failed to provide convincing evidence linking anyone else to the murder. Lester's current wife testified, stating that although her husband used an escort service, her faith prevented her from leaving him. Nevertheless, she could not provide an alibi for him and identified him in a supermarket surveillance video where he bought a disposable phone. Lester's first trial ended in a mistrial on September 9, 2016, when the jury was unable to reach a unanimous verdict. However, the district attorney was convinced of Lester's guilt and continued to investigate and re-examine the evidence. After several weeks, on November 21, 2016, the jury finally reached a verdict, finding Lester guilty of all charges related to Page's death. The judge sentenced him to life in prison without parole. Lester's defense team appealed the sentence, but an appeals court panel upheld the conviction and sentence in June 2022. Page's funeral was held on April 28, 2012. Her obituary remembered her as a beautiful and radiant woman with a smile that lit up the room. Her tragic death has had a lasting impact on her family and friends, leaving her 3 children without their loving mother and support. The tragic case of Page captured the nation's attention and spanned many years, but through the unwavering dedication of law enforcement relatives, justice was finally served. Lester Ralph Jones was ultimately convicted and sentenced to life imprisonment without parole, ensuring he can no longer harm innocent people. Page's courageous story stands as a powerful reminder of the significance of persisting in the pursuit of justice, no matter how long and arduous the journey may be. Her memory will forever be cherished by those who knew and loved her. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you. The case of Liana Friedenbach. Liana Friedenbach and Felipe Café, the young people involved in this tragedy, came from different backgrounds. Liana, born in May 1987 in São Paulo, was the elder of two children in a wealthy and respected family. Her father, Henry Friedenbach, was a successful lawyer and a well-known figure in the city. Felipe Silva Café, also from São Paulo, was born in July 1984, but grew up in a large, modest family. From a young age, he worked part-time to support himself and help his family. They met at school and developed a strong friendship that blossomed into romance. However, they had to keep their relationship a secret. Liana's parents, who were strict and religious, had brought her up to attend Sunday school and church regularly, and were opposed to her dating at such a young age. Social inequality also contributed significantly to the situation, as she came from a wealthy family while her partner was from a poor background. However, the parents' prohibitions did not deter the young lovers from staying together. Instead, they started secretly dating in various locations where they would not be seen, just to spend some time together. In the fall of 2003, the lovers decided to take a trip to a secluded area to be alone for a while. They carefully planned the trip, which was meant to be an exciting adventure for them. They came up with a believable alibi to justify their absence and avoid arousing suspicion. Felipe told his parents that he and his friends were going on a camping trip. Liana, on the other hand, told her parents that she was going on a sightseeing trip with some guys from church, knowing that they would not question her further. The Friedenbach and Café families believed the fabricated stories and let their children go without any concerns. Liana and Felipe were overjoyed that they could spend a whole week together, free from their parents' scrutiny and judgment. The young couple decided to visit the picturesque province of Iguaçu. They packed lightly, bringing a tent, sleeping bags, some personal items, and a small supply of food. However, they faced a significant challenge. They had hardly any money. As students, they were entitled to free public transportation, so they planned their route in advance to reach their destination by bus. On the morning of October 31st, the lovers met at the agreed meeting point, careful not to be seen by anyone who knew them. They caught the first bus and, after arriving in another city in the evening, spent the night at the bus station. 2 more bus rides took them to their desired location. From there, they had to walk a few kilometers to a secluded spot in the woods where they planned to camp and spend a few days alone together. Despite their fatigue after the long journey, the warm and sunny day put them in high spirits, and they joked, laughed, and made plans for their mini vacation. Once they reached the spot marked on their map, they began setting up their modest but cozy camp. Liana and Felipe's plans were ruined by unwelcome visitors. When they traveled to a remote and secluded area, they didn't consider that poverty and crime often thrive in such places. Their arrival didn't go unnoticed, especially since they were well-dressed and carrying large backpacks and bags as they walked through the forest to the abandoned farm where they planned to stay. They caught the attention of local bandits, Paulo Cesar de Silva Marquez, nicknamed Perran Bucu, and Roberto Alves Cardoso, known as Chino, who was only 16 but already led the gang. The bandits were interested in the strangers, particularly the beautiful young girl. They decided that the backpacks likely contained valuables and could be robbed. The bandits secretly followed the couple and watched from the underbrush. Liana and Felipe set up their tent, had a snack, and began to clean up their campsite. The bandits waited in ambush until they were certain no one else would join the couple and that they didn't have any weapons. Perran Bucu and Chino then attacked Liana and Felipe, threatening them, and Felipe, frightened, didn't even try to run away or fight back against the unknown attackers. Having thoroughly searched all the bags and backpacks, the criminals found nothing of value. They then decided to demand a ransom from the boys' and girls' relatives. Liana, terrified, quickly revealed that she came from a wealthy family and her father would pay them any amount they demanded. The criminals were thrilled with this development, but lacking experience in such cases, they were unsure how to proceed to get the money and release the prisoners. As they refined their plan, the bandits tried to determine the value of their captives and the ransom they could demand. To prevent escape, they decided to hide the prisoners. Initially, they were taken to a rundown structure near the farm where they were staying, but it lacked windows and doors. Later, they were moved to the home of one of the gang members. There, Felipe was tied up and brutally beaten to prevent escape and resistance. That night, the gang members took turns abusing the bound and helpless Liana, ultimately breaking her spirit. The kidnappers were unable to figure out how to demand and collect a ransom, so they decided to kill the captives and hide their bodies in the woods, making it unlikely they would ever be found. After torturing the kidnappers took them to a remote area in the woods the following day. Pernambuco took the badly beaten Felipe deep into the forest, where a gunshot was heard, and then he returned alone. Liana realized what had happened and that her loved one was dead. Although the kidnappers tried to convince Liana that they had released Felipe, they had other sinister plans in mind for her. They intended to keep her captive as their plaything until they grew tired of her, especially since no one had begun searching for the missing boys at that time. A couple of days after Liana left, her parents discovered that there was no church excursion trip, and her friends were unaware of her whereabouts. The Friedenbach family suspected that Liana had run off with her boyfriend, Felipe, and immediately contacted his parents. However, Felipe's family believed he had gone camping with friends, so they couldn't assist in locating the couple. The situation was complicated by the fact that neither Liana nor Felipe had been in contact for several days, and their phones were turned off. Thanks to the Friedenbach family's connections and resources, they were able to mobilize the entire city's police force to track the couple's trail, step by step. Through trickery, they managed to reconstruct the route the young people took after running away from home. The police arrived at Embu Guasu, where the last bus had dropped them off, and from there they had to navigate through a deserted wooded area on foot. This was also the last location where their phones were still online. A massive search operation was launched, involving police officers, rescuers, and concerned citizens who had learned about the incident and wanted to help. A local businessman even offered his personal helicopter to aid in the search effort and distributed flyers with photos of the missing pair. The search party quickly found the couple's camp, but what they saw was chilling. Although there were no signs of bloodshed or struggle, it was clear that something horrific had taken place. The contents of their bags had been emptied and scattered about. Their tent had been sliced open from top to bottom with a knife, and the guys' phones were lying nearby. As the rescuers combed through the area, they soon stumbled upon Philippe's lifeless body. The young man had been shot in the back of the head at close range, and it was clear that he had never stood a chance. Although the chances of finding Liana alive were now extremely low, the searchers held on to hope, however slim. Henry Friedenbach actively sought the help of the press to widely publicize the search for Liana, ensuring that as many people as possible were aware of the situation. A substantial reward was offered for any information about her whereabouts, although unfortunately, this did not lead to a breakthrough in the case. Once the criminals had disposed of Felipe, they returned Liana to the same house where they had previously held both her and Felipe captive. By this time, the group of criminals had been joined by their accomplices, Antonio Gano da Silva and Agnaldo Pius Chino. Agnaldo, in particular, callously declared that Liana was now his property and that he had the freedom to do with her as he pleased. He then shockingly invited the others to indulge in their darkest desires with Liana, an invitation that was quickly accepted by the group. A day after the large-scale search operation began, the criminals relocated with their captive Liana to the house of Anthony Matias de Barros, another gang member. That evening, they took Liana with them when they went fishing. The ringleader showed a pretense of concern by putting his jacket over her due to the chilly weather. Later that evening, Chino's older brother, who was unaware of his siblings' illegal activities, arrived at the same location. Chino introduced Liana to his brother as his girlfriend, but the brother immediately recognized her as the girl the police were searching for. The brother took Chino aside and warned him that the police were closing in on them. Chino saw this as a warning and decided it was time to eliminate Liana and flee. He deceived Liana by telling her she was free to go and he would escort her to the road. However, he actually led her into the forest where he brutally stabbed her to death with a knife and then crushed her skull with a rock to ensure she was dead. Liana's body was discovered 5 days after the massacre, with no signs of life and severe mutilation. The key piece of evidence was the killer's jacket, which Liana was wearing. The perpetrators were not only cruel, cynical, and ruthless, but also incredibly stupid and short-sighted. Despite their brutality, they did not attempt to flee, hide, or destroy the physical evidence, believing they would never be caught. This overconfidence ultimately led to their quick identification and apprehension by the police. The ringleader, Chino, made a crucial mistake by leaving his jacket on Liana's body, which retained his sweat marks. He then took the murder weapon to his house, washing it and hiding it in the yard. He also tried to wash his blood-stained clothes so he could continue wearing them. However, DNA analysis ultimately linked the gang members to the crime, allowing the police to apprehend them almost simultaneously. The ringleader did not deny his involvement in the crime and instead chose to testify, bragging about kidnapping, abusing, and ultimately killing the victim, Liana. He provided a detailed account of her final days. Following a lengthy trial, most adult members of the criminal gang received severe sentences. However, the ringleader, Chino, was only 16 at the time of the crimes, so he was sent to a specialized juvenile prison with a relatively lenient regime. During his incarceration, Chino made multiple escape attempts and exhibited aggressive and inappropriate behavior, which led to a psychiatric evaluation. The examination revealed several mental abnormalities, which cumulatively turned him into a calculating sadist and murderer devoid of pity or remorse. Chino, responsible for the murder of young men, was sent to a secure medical facility for mandatory treatment and rehabilitation despite the family's numerous appeals. His living conditions are now comfortable, with a private room featuring a large TV, internet access, and a comfortable bed with an orthopedic mattress. He receives 4 balanced meals a day with a customized menu, and his monthly maintenance costs around approximately $2,500. In recent years, Chino has repeatedly requested his release, arguing that he has completed his treatment and no longer poses a threat to anyone, allowing him to resume his normal life. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Isabella Hellman. Louis Bennett, born in 1977 in England, moved to Australia with his family at a young age, and by 2017 held dual citizenship of Britain and Australia. In 2015, he met Isabella Hellman online. Isabella Rodriguez was born in 1975 in Colombia, and her family relocated to Florida in the 1990s, obtaining residency and eventually U.S. citizenship in 2002 when she was 27 years old. Previously, she was married to William Hellman, but they divorced in 2015 after 10 years together. After meeting online, Louis and Isabella's communication quickly turned into a romantic relationship in real life. In July 2016, they had a daughter named Amelia. 6 months later, the couple bought an apartment in Delray Beach, a city on Florida's Atlantic coast. The following month, in February 2017, Isabella and Louis got married. Isabella worked as a real estate agent while Louis owned a small solar panel company. On April 30th, 2017, Isabella left her 9-month-old daughter with her relatives and traveled to St. Martin, a small Caribbean island, where she met Louis. The couple planned a romantic getaway, similar to a honeymoon, during which they intended to return home to Florida on a sailing catamaran Luis had purchased before meeting Isabella. They departed St. Martin on April 30th and reached the British Virgin Islands on May 1st, and then sailed off the coast of Puerto Rico on May 2nd. Their next destination was Cuba, where they spent the most time and from where they planned to head back home. On May 14th, at around 5:30 p.m., the catamaran set sail from the Cuban resort of Varadero. 3 hours later, Isabella called her sister to let her know she would be home the next day. However, around 1 a.m., Luis sent out a distress signal. He contacted the U.S. Coast Guard, reporting that the ship had started sinking after colliding with an unknown object and that his wife was missing. At around 4 a.m., a Coast Guard helicopter crew located the Bennett life raft, and at dawn, the capsized catamaran was found floating upside down. Luis was rescued and taken to Key West Island, the southernmost part of Florida. During his interview with investigators, Luis explained that he and his wife took alternating shifts on duty, and it was Isabella's turn when the accident occurred. At the time, he was asleep in his stateroom, but he woke up to realize the ship had collided with something. When he went up on deck, he didn't see his wife, so he began calling out her name, but she didn't respond. Luis suggested that the loose mast could have pushed Isabella overboard. He also recalled that the last time he saw his wife, she was wearing a life jacket. When the Coast Guard rescued Bennett, a rescue swimmer noted that his backpack was unusually heavy. Upon examining the items Bennett had brought on the life raft, the officers found 225 collectible coins, the origin of which remained unknown. On May 15th, Isabella Hellman was reported missing, and a search and rescue operation was launched from the water and air. However, after 4 days of searching without finding any trace of Isabella, the Coast Guard officially ended the rescue operation on May 18th. Authorities grew suspicious when Luis Bennett requested a letter from the Coast Guard, stating his wife Isabella was presumed dead less than 24 hours after the search for her had been called off. However, the Coast Guard denied his request, citing that it was beyond their jurisdiction to issue such a certificate. On May 24th, Bennett announced on a television station that he was heading to Cuba, where he intended to rent a boat and continue searching for his wife on his own. But just 3 days later, on May 27th, he met Isabella's sister, claiming he had just returned from Cuba, where he had met with local authorities and searched every hospital, but found no trace of her. Bennett told her sister that, given it had been 2 weeks since Isabella went missing, he wasn't holding out much hope of seeing her again, and was struggling to come to terms with the loss, as she was his soulmate, and he had thought they would spend the rest of their lives together. On May 28th, Luis and the police visited his wife's family home to collect their daughter, but Isabella's family refused to hand her over. A heated argument ensued, during which Isabella's sister Elizabeth repeatedly accused Luis of being responsible for Isabella's death. Bennett's calm exterior and his actions following his wife's disappearance sparked suspicion not only among Isabella's family, but also among the police. While interviewing the missing woman's friends and family, detectives consistently heard that Isabella and Luis's quarrels had intensified after the birth of their child. Their neighbors corroborated this. Isabella had confided in loved ones that Luis was pressuring her to move to Australia, while she was determined to remain in the United States. On May 30th, Bennett gave an interview in which he denied any involvement in his wife's disappearance. According to him, he and Isabella had planned a bright future together, but now he was alone, and their daughter would grow up motherless. In parallel with the investigation into Isabella Hellman's disappearance, police launched a probe into the origin of the gold and silver coins found among Luis Bennett's belongings. Their inquiry revealed that Bennett had previously worked as first mate on a yacht, where the captain had a stash of 617 collectible silver and gold coins worth around $100,000. While the yacht was docked in the Caribbean with no one on board, the coins were stolen, but the thief was never caught. However, once the FBI began tracing the coins' origin, the yacht's captain identified the coins found on Bennett as part of the stolen haul. With this new information, the FBI obtained a search warrant for Bennett's apartment, where they initially found 225 coins among his belongings when he was rescued. On June 16, 2017, a further search of the apartment uncovered 162 gold coins hidden in a closet. By then, Bennett had fled to England with his daughter, where his parents lived, possibly due to financial constraints. However, he was forced to return to the U.S., partly because he still owned a $125,000 apartment and other personal items, and was also eligible for insurance payments for a lost catamaran. On August 28, 2017, Louis Bennett was arrested in Florida and charged with stealing coins, to which he pleaded not guilty. 2 days later, a federal judge set his bail at $250,000, an amount he was unable to pay, so he remained in custody awaiting trial. While in custody, Bennett attempted to have his missing wife, Isabella, declared dead, which would have granted him access to their joint property and her bank accounts. However, the judge denied his request twice, citing the ongoing investigation into her disappearance. In November 2017, Bennett pleaded guilty to both stealing the coins and knowingly transporting them into the United States. Prior to his sentencing, Bennett's parents wrote a letter to the judge, requesting leniency and a lighter sentence, citing the fact that their young granddaughter had already lost her mother. On February 20, 2018, Bennett received a 7-month prison sentence, followed by 3 years of probation. On the same day, he was also charged with second-degree murder in connection with the stolen coins case. According to authorities, Bennett intentionally crashed the catamaran he was on with his wife Isabella, staging a wreck to cover up evidence of the crime. The prosecutor based this charge on the claim that Bennett wanted to inherit his wife's fortune to pay off his debts and then take their young daughter Emilia to live in Australia. Isabella had expressed her fears about her husband through text messages a few months before her death. In these messages, she revealed that she felt disrespected by Bennett and often found him angry when she came home. She further confessed that she was afraid to return home. Months before she vanished, Ms. Hellman wrote a telling message. "If you don't love me anymore, let's resolve our issues as soon as possible, because your constant mistreatment of me is pathetic." An examination of the catamaran before it sank revealed that the portholes below the waterline were open, and the damage to the twin hulls seemed to have been caused from the inside. The waterline is the point where the calm water surface meets the hull of a floating vessel. By analyzing photos and videos taken by the U.S. Coast Guard, an FBI-hired expert concluded that Bennett's story was false. The expert's analysis suggested that the vessel's sinking was not accidental, but rather intentional. A U.S. Coast Guard Academy Associate Professor of Nautical Architecture and Ocean Engineering testified in court records that the Coast Guard officers who discovered the sinking catamaran found no object it could have collided with. Divers inspecting the vessel were hesitant to enter due to the risk of collapse. Eventually, the catamaran sank to a depth of over 4,000 feet, and no detailed inspection was possible. 2 years after Isabella Hellman vanished, a judge officially declared her dead. The ruling confirmed what many had suspected from the moment she was reported missing at sea. In a series of court orders, Palm Beach County Circuit Judge Scott Suskauer stated that Isabella Hellman is legally presumed to have died on May 14, 2017. Despite extensive searches, her body has not been found, and she has made no contact with her family. Based on the available evidence, the judge concluded that Isabella Hellman is deceased. In January 2019, U.S. District Judge Federico Moreno postponed Bennett's sentencing, initially set for February, to May 28. The judge wanted to allow Isabella Hellman's family to visit her 3-year-old daughter Emilia before making a decision. In November 2019, Bennett agreed to a plea deal, which reduced the second-degree murder charge to manslaughter. This plea deal limited his maximum sentence to 8 years in prison, down from a potential life sentence. Isabella's family found the deal unusual, but acknowledged that authorities had involved them in the decision-making process. According to a document filed with the court, Bennett claimed he didn't recall whether he was searching for or calling out to his wife when he realized she was missing. He neither fired flares nor searched for her on the catamaran or in the water. Instead, Bennett loaded essential items onto a life raft, attempted to stage a collision to flood the catamaran, and abandoned the vessel. The prosecutor's office stated that Bennett waited 45 minutes after stopping to realize his wife was nowhere to be found before calling for help. It's worth noting that the U.S. Attorney's Office stated Bennett had extensive experience sailing in open water for prolonged periods. Specifically, he was trained in emergency procedures and had successfully navigated from St. Martin to Australia in the past. Despite this knowledge, he failed to utilize his skills. Notably, he did not insist that Isabella wear a life jacket, harness, or personal locator during their trip. Bennett acknowledged his responsibility in the accident, specifically handing over control of the catamaran to his inexperienced wife, which ultimately led to her falling overboard and drowning. As a certified coastal skipper with training from the Royal Yachting Association in the UK, Bennett was well-versed in emergency procedures, including man-overboard protocols and night sailing safety. In contrast, his wife lacked any formal sailing certification and had significantly less sailing experience. Bennett is the only one who knows the full truth about that fateful night, and he's unlikely to ever share it. Following his guilty plea, Isabella Hellman's family, through their lawyer, released a heartfelt statement urging Bennett to show remorse. They emphasized that the pain he has caused them is constant and unbearable, and that there is nothing he can do to alleviate it. Additionally, they expressed their sadness over being denied contact with Emilia, Isabella and Bennett's daughter, who is also a part of their family. They yearn to hold her, love her, and be with her. On May 28, 2019, Louis Bennett, a 42-year-old man who had pleaded guilty to manslaughter in the death of his wife Isabella Hellman, received an 8-year prison sentence. At the hearing, Bennett offered his sincere apologies to Isabella's family, deeply regretting the immense pain his actions had caused. He acknowledged that his poor decisions had only added to the tragedy. During the hearing, Bennett requested that the judge consider early release from prison so that he could continue to care for his daughter, Emilia. However, the judge sided with the prosecution and sentenced him to 8 years in prison, followed by 3 years of supervised release. Following the verdict, Isabella Hellman's family members announced their plans to visit Emilia, who currently resides with Bennett's parents in England. They hope that these visits will enable Emilia to grow up knowing that she has 2 families who love and care for her, and that both families will be actively involved in her life, providing her with as much support as possible as she grows up. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Sarah Foxwell. Sarah Foxwell was born on May 18, 1998, in Salisbury, Maryland. She grew up in a large family with 2 sisters and 4 brothers. Her mother also had 3 more children from a previous marriage. Eventually, Sarah's parents divorced, and her mother faced difficult times having to care for all the children on her own. She had to work a lot, so the children often stayed with relatives. Sarah was the middle child, constantly trying to maintain harmony among her siblings when they were arguing and fighting. She always exuded positivity and usually managed to bring her family together. In December 2009, when Sarah was 11, she temporarily moved in with her aunt and grandparents. Christmas was coming, and her mom was working extra shifts to buy gifts for every kid. Her aunt lived on the outskirts of Salisbury in a large farmhouse. The kids loved it there because of the vast space to play around. On December 22nd, everything seemed normal, with just 3 days until Christmas. The kids were in high spirits, running around the house, playing and just having fun. Their aunt ordered pizza for dinner, and around 9 p.m., they all started getting ready for bed. Sarah slept in the same room with her 6-year-old sister Emma, at the end of the hallway near the back door. They chatted for a bit and fell asleep. The next morning, Sarah's grandfather woke up and went to wake the children. He went into the girls' room, but found only Emma there. Thinking that Sarah might have already woken up, he searched the entire house, but couldn't find her. He told her aunt about it, and they started to search every corner together. Eventually, they realized that Sarah wasn't in the house. Her aunt thought she might have gone outside to play in the snow that had fallen overnight, but she quickly realized Sarah's shoes and jacket were still at home. Then her aunt noticed something strange. Sarah's toothbrush was missing from its usual spot in the bathroom. After searching the area around the house with her grandpa and finding no signs of Sarah, her aunt decided to call her mother. She rushed over, and they contacted the police. The officers arrived within minutes and immediately began searching the house. Sarah's aunt told them that she always checked all the doors and windows every night before bed, and she had done so the previous evening as well. The police couldn't find Sarah anywhere inside the house or nearby. Upon learning about the missing toothbrush, the officers began to consider the possibility of an abduction. Perhaps the kidnapper had grabbed this item before leaving the house with Sarah. So they decided to check if all the doors and windows were indeed locked. As they approached the back door next to Sarah's room and tried the handle, it opened right away. Sarah's aunt assured the door had been locked the night before and hadn't been opened since. However, she remembered they kept a spare key outside near the entrance. She went there and checked, but the key wasn't there. This further supported the abduction theory, as the fact that the perpetrator knew about this spare key suggested that they were familiar with the family. Another unsettling detail was that their dog had not made a sound that night, despite usually barking at strangers. Fearing that Sarah might have been kidnapped, investigators immediately initiated a large-scale search. News of her disappearance spread rapidly, and many local residents contacted the police, offering their help. The sheriff appealed to the public through the media, asking them to check their properties for anything that might look suspicious. Dozens of local officers were called for the search, and they also got help from neighboring towns' departments and even other states. They all hoped to find Sarah alive, given that the perpetrator had taken her toothbrush, which might indicate his plans to keep her alive. The police devoted all their resources to the search. Outside the house, they found their first lead. There were relatively fresh tire tracks in the snow, indicating that the abductor likely arrived by car. Since all of Sarah's warm clothing was left behind, it was clear that the perpetrator couldn't have taken her on foot. Meanwhile, Sarah's relatives were brought to the police station, where something unexpected happened. Sarah's 6-year-old sister, Emma, who slept in the same room with her, tugged at her grandmother's sleeve and whispered that she had a secret. She saw the person who took Sarah. According to the girl, she woke up to this man saying something to her sister. Emma didn't understand what was happening, but she got scared, so she pretended to be asleep. A few moments later, she saw the man leave the room with Sarah. This story shocked her relatives, but then Emma said something even more chilling. She recognized the man. It was Mr. Tommy. The adults immediately knew exactly who she meant. It was 30-year-old Thomas Leggs, the former boyfriend of Sarah's aunt. Although they had broken up a few months ago, he had spent a lot of time at their house, and all the kids knew him well. The police were also familiar with Thomas due to his extensive criminal record. Over the years, he had repeatedly come to their attention for crimes involving women and girls. He first landed behind bars at the age of 18 for assaulting a 12-year-old girl and receiving a 4-year sentence, but he was released early after just a few months. Later, he received a 7-year sentence for assaulting another minor, but he was released early again Now, this time after serving only 6 months due to his good behavior. Shortly after, he received a 6-month sentence for another assault. Then, he attempted to assault another girl on the same day his wife returned home from the hospital with their newborn daughter. The woman later divorced him and obtained a restraining order against Thomas because he had threatened to kill both her and their daughter. Another incident happened when a woman and her little daughter moved to the street where Thomas had lived. One day, the girl, along with her friend, was sitting on the porch of her house. Thomas approached them and told one of the girls that he had been watching her play in the yard and called her a wild girl. Then, he grabbed a stick and began hitting her on the buttocks. The girl ran inside and told her mom about what just happened. The woman saw Thomas through the window and realized she had already seen his face before moving to this house. She had checked the sex offender registry in this area, and there was a photo of Thomas. The mother reported him to the police, but Thomas managed to avoid any punishment for his actions before the trial began. The woman was asked not to mention the fact that Thomas was in the sex offender list and had previously been convicted of sexual assault, as the concern was that mentioning it would bias the jury, potentially leading to an unfair verdict for Thomas. Just a few months before Sarah's disappearance, Thomas was arrested once again. He had broken into the bedroom of a 24-year-old woman in the middle of the night, undressed, and began pleasuring himself while standing next to her bed. After his arrest, he was released on bail. At first, Thomas successfully hid his criminal history from Sarah's aunt, but she eventually learned about it. Nevertheless, he somehow managed to convince her that all these accusations were false and that he hadn't done anything he was accused of. Considering all of this, detectives had no doubt that Thomas was behind Sarah's abduction. Her relatives also noted that during the time the man was dating Sarah's aunt, he spent significantly more time with Sarah than with the other kids in the house. Back then, no one thought much of it, but after her disappearance, this fact seemed very disturbing. The police wanted to speak with Thomas, so they went to his residence. The man lived in a shed on his parents' property, just a few miles away. Investigators took him in for questioning and also obtained a warrant to search the shed. Inside the shed, there was a mess and poor living conditions, but no evidence was found linking him to Sarah's disappearance. However, the police discovered a large collection of adult magazines and DVDs. The shed was filled with them. During the interrogation, Thomas repeatedly denied his involvement in Sarah's disappearance. He claimed that he was trying to deal with his problems, referring to his propensity for committing crimes against underage girls. According to Thomas, during the time he was dating Sarah's aunt, he deliberately avoided being alone with the children so that no one could falsely accuse him of anything inappropriate. When told that Emma had seen him on the night of the abduction, Thomas claimed that the girl had often made up stories before and that he wasn't there. Detectives didn't believe a word he said, and it wasn't just because of Thomas's previous crimes. While they were speaking about the disappearance of 11-year-old Sarah, he repeatedly smiled and mocked the sheriff, even though Thomas considered his crime absolutely perfect and that the police wouldn't be able to prove his guilt. Thomas claimed to have a strong alibi. He said he was at the bar with his friend until late into the night. Investigators immediately checked this story, and to their surprise, the alibi was confirmed. Thomas was indeed seen in the bar, but there was a catch. He left around 1 a.m., and since then, no one, including his parents, had seen him until around 7 a.m. During the examination of his phone, they also found that on that night, Thomas had sent messages to several women offering to meet up, but all of them declined. Despite all the efforts, the detectives were still unable to break Thomas. They were hopeful that the girl was still alive, so they focused all their energy on finding her. When they searched his pickup truck, the police immediately discovered several significant clues inside the vehicle: Sarah's green toothbrush and a large lollipop. The investigators believed that Thomas could have used the candy to lure her into his car. The tire tracks also matched the tracks left in the snow in front of the house on the night of Sarah's disappearance. The man himself told the detectives that he hadn't been to that house in over a month, but now they had proof that he had lied. Despite the fact that Thomas continued to deny everything, the police still hoped to find Sarah. Hundreds of officers and volunteers continued to search the area, scouring the territory for many kilometers around her home. They checked abandoned buildings, forests, ravines, and bodies of water. Canine units with search dogs tried to pick up the girl's trail, while helicopters flew over the area. The police also received enormous support from the local community, as people came to the station and signed up as volunteers, despite the bad weather. Unfortunately, on that day, the search once again yielded no results, but no one even thought about giving up. Early the next morning, they went out to search for her again. Throughout this time, the stream of volunteers not only didn't dwindle, but grew even larger. In total, 3,000 people joined the search efforts. The sheriff even had to relocate the coordination center to the large baseball stadium because the police station simply couldn't fit such a huge number of people. Notably among the volunteers were not only adults, but also their children. They handed out water, hot tea, and food, and everyone tried to do their best, hoping that eventually it would help them find Sarah alive. Meanwhile, investigators obtained another piece of evidence linking Thomas to the abduction. As soon as the man was brought to the station, he was given a new set of clothes, and his own clothes were sent to the lab. Experts found foreign DNA on the suspect's underwear and compared it to a sample from Sarah obtained from her belongings. It was a complete match. Considering the fact that DNA was found on his underwear, detectives came to a grim conclusion. Apparently, after the abduction, Thomas sexually assaulted her. The second day of the search also yielded no results, and on the morning of December 25th, Christmas Day, thousands of people once again went to look for Sarah. Despite the holiday, none of them even considered giving up. On that same day, investigators received GPS data from Thomas's phone. Unfortunately, there weren't exact locations, but rather just information about his phone connecting to specific cell towers. Police found out that on the night of Sarah's disappearance, his phone had connected to 3 towers, allowing them to determine the approximate triangular area where he must have been. Investigators focused all their efforts in this area, which was located practically on the state border, about 8 miles from Sarah's aunt's house. This area was mostly covered with trees, and hundreds of people combed through every inch of this territory, hoping for a Christmas miracle that Sarah would be found alive. Unfortunately, reality turned out to be much more tragic. Around 4 p.m., police noticed Sarah's body on the ground, almost at the state border. She lay on her back with her arms raised upwards, pointing towards the sky. When medical experts began examining the body, even they were shocked. At first, they confirmed that the victim had been sexually assaulted. They found signs of strangulation, but determined that the perpetrator had failed to kill her that way. In Sarah's lungs, experts found dirt, leading them to believe that the killer had attempted to drown her in a puddle. During this torture, the victim lost consciousness. After that, she suffered severe burns. According to the experts, the perpetrator may have left her lying in the forest for some time, then went to get gasoline, came back, and set Sarah on fire. Traces of smoke were also found in her lungs, indicating that she was still alive at that moment. This also explained why her hands were raised and pointing to the sky, which sometimes happens when a person is exposed to fire. Such unimaginable cruelty shocked everyone involved in the case, and even the detectives found it difficult to believe that all these atrocities had truly been committed against the victim. But now, when they knew what had happened to Sarah, all they wanted was one thing: to secure the death penalty for Thomas, despite the fact that he continued to deny everything. There was an impressive amount of evidence against him. After the discovery of the body, forensic experts found several hairs belonging to Sarah and particles of fabric from her pajamas on the front seat of Thomas's pickup truck, further proving his involvement in the abduction. With all the other evidence, this practically ruled out any possibility of him avoiding punishment. The wait for the trial stretched for more than a year, but it never began. In early 2011, the prosecution decided to offer Thomas a plea deal. Under its conditions, he would admit his guilt and receive a life sentence instead of the death penalty. Considering what he had done to Sarah, this deal might seem unfair, but there were a few serious reasons in favor of such a decision. The main one was that Sarah's younger sister would have to testify repeatedly in court in the presence of the murderer. The abduction and death of her sister became a serious challenge for her, and the trial could have affected her even more. Another reason for offering the deal was that the prosecution could not be 100% sure of securing a death sentence if Thomas's lawyers had achieved a different verdict. He could have the opportunity to be released someday, which was not part of the terms of the deal under any circumstances. There was another problem. The state governor opposed the death penalty at that time, further reducing the chances of obtaining this sentence. In the end, Thomas agreed and told detectives everything they already knew without him. He admitted that he tricked Sarah into leaving her house with him. Then he took her away, sexually assaulted, and killed her. He received 2 life sentences without the possibility of parole and was transferred to a maximum security prison. In the first few days, another inmate attacked him with a makeshift weapon during lunch, inflicting several serious cuts. Thomas survived, and prison staff took additional measures to protect him from other inmates who wanted to harm him. Sarah's case sparked outrage because the system repeatedly gave Thomas the opportunities to be released and continue committing crimes. Eventually, the state of Maryland passed Sarah's law, which mandates that anyone convicted of child abuse must serve at least 15 years in prison before being eligible for parole. Hello friends, welcome to our channel. Today we're going to take a look at another horrible case with you, the case of Victor Alexander Puderol. After Victor Alexander Puderol committed the heinous crime, he carelessly went to his girlfriend Raina's father's house. Ostensibly, he was there to retrieve forgotten children's clothes. While at the home, he took a tablet belonging to one of the victimized girls and pawned it at a nearby shop, receiving about 500 pesos. The next day, he spent the equivalent of $10 while vacationing on the beach with his best friend, Crystal. During this outing, he confessed that he had done something bad to his lover, but provided no specific details. Crystal later indicated that Victor's tone, words, and expressions conveyed the seriousness of what occurred. Allegedly, she even tried to visit Raina's house to check if everything was all right with her and her children. However, Victor refused the visit, citing disorder and a difficult emotional atmosphere in the family. That was enough for Crystal to feel she had done her best in the situation. She chose not to go to the police. Concerned neighbors contacted law enforcement when they could no longer ignore or explain away a strong smell of decomposition emanating from Raina and Victor's home. The pungent odor was undoubtedly coming from their recently moved-in home, where flies were clustering at the windows. Because Raina and Victor had only recently moved into the neighborhood and had not established connections with neighbors, nobody had their phone numbers or any other means of contacting them. Notably, no one had seen Raina, Victor, or the children for several days. Unable to contact the homeowners and alarmed by the smell, worried neighbors called emergency services. A few hours after receiving the call, law enforcement officers picked the door lock and entered the home. Inside, they encountered a truly horrifying sight. 4 lifeless bodies, Raina and her children, were found. Raina's daughters lay in a room next to their mother, while her son was found hanging from a rung in a closet. The circumstances remain unclear. The media was on the scene right away, and before long, detectives had identified the man living with Raina. Reports containing shocking details of the family's death quickly went live on a major metropolitan TV channel. Victor Alexander Puderol, while at work in his workshop, learned that the police had broken into his house and found the bodies of 4 victims. In messages to Miguel Urena Marino, Victor shared contacts for Reina's relatives and asked him to pass them on to the police. He explained that he only trusted Miguel and deeply regretted what had happened. He also asked Miguel to convey his last wish, that he wanted a large motorcycle escort at his funeral from the biker club. His final message to Miguel read, "Now I don't believe anyone. Everyone wants to save me, but it's not going to happen. I'm leaving this damned world. I don't care what happens. I'm leaving. See you later." Miguel Arena contacted the police immediately, sharing everything and adding that Victor had reportedly taken his own life. Law enforcement officers tracked Victor's cell phone location and went to the scene. Victor Alexander Putol had not harmed himself and hadn't even thought about it. There was no remorse or guilt for what had occurred. The man knew he would be caught and had planned his arrest to ensure it was as safe for him as possible. Gathering his essential items in a backpack, he headed to a small park not far from the workshop. Victor sat pensively on a sidewalk near the park for a while until a passerby approached and asked if he needed help. Shaking his head from side to side, he replied that he was fine, stood up, walked into the park, and lay down on the grass, his hands behind his head as he gazed serenely at the sky. He lay there for almost an hour until around 8 a.m. when a national police van arrived. Victor did not move or resist arrest. The process took less than 5 minutes. Reina Isabel Encarnacion was born in 1985 in the Dominican Republic. Not long after her birth, her parents chose to separate. Her father left the family, yet he continued to support his ex-wife and daughter. Subsequently, Reina's mother met another man, and soon the girl had a stepfather who basically became another father to her. Reina formed a strong bond with her mother's new husband while maintaining a warm relationship with her biological father. Both men treated her with warmth and care. Growing up, Reina was an inquisitive and active child. She loved learning and enjoyed going to school. Her father's house was nearby, so she often saw him. It seemed that this intelligent and cheerful girl had a bright future ahead of her. After successfully completing school, Reina entered university to pursue higher education in commercial law. At the same time, she applied to the Autonomous University of Santo Domingo with hopes of obtaining a second degree in medicine. Unfortunately, she was not accepted and had to postpone this dream until the following year. When Reina turned 20, she met Daniel Bowden, a man much older than herself. Despite their significant age difference, there was an undeniable romantic attraction between them. A few months into their relationship, Reina became pregnant, and soon after, the couple married. From this union came 3 children, Daniela Aracmanina and Angela. Due to her new responsibilities as a mother, Reina had to give up her dream of obtaining a second higher education degree. Initially, their marriage seemed ideal. However, over time, their age difference began to strain the relationship, leading to frequent quarrels. Understanding that constant conflicts were harmful to their children, Daniel decided it was best for them to separate after 8 years together. A lengthy legal battle ensued over child custody. Family court specialists intervened when both parties struggled to reach an agreement on their own. They decided on conducting psychological evaluations to ascertain the children's preferences regarding their living arrangements. The experts concluded that custody should be awarded to the father, considering his age, financial stability, and taking into account the opinions of the older children. Despite the recommendations from experts, the judge presiding over the case disregarded their and awarded custody of the older children to Reina. Angela, the youngest daughter, was placed under the care of one of Daniel's sisters. Tragically, this decision not only took away their future, but also affected their lives. Subsequent years proved that the judge should have paid more attention to expert advice. Reina's interests seemed to be more focused on alimony than on the welfare of her children. After obtaining custody of her older children, she promptly handed them over to her mother, believing it was the best solution for everyone. She then initiated a new legal battle over alimony payments. Reina contended that her ex-husband had failed to pay any of the court-ordered alimony. Daniel, however, argued that he had met all his obligations, but could not provide proof, alleging that these payments were made in cash. This legal dispute lasted several months and concluded in favor of Reina, with Daniel having to make another alimony payment. During this second legal proceeding, an important development occurred. Reina's mother testified on behalf of her former son-in-law, Daniel. She maintained that Daniel was a commendable father who deserved better treatment, emphasizing that he and her daughter had shared 8 beautiful years together. She attested to his responsibility and dedication as both a husband and father. It's important to note that Reina did not completely neglect her children. She visited them almost daily at their grandmother's residence and often took them home on weekends. However, during most other times, she appeared to focus on enjoying life to its fullest. At one of these social gatherings, she met Victor Alexander Putor. Victor was 2 years younger than Reina and had an intriguing presence. He was mystically minded with long black hair and glowing white contact lenses, and a biker as well as a metalhead. Despite these traits making quite an impression initially, he also exhibited qualities less desirable: dirty and unkempt appearance, alongside an introverted and insecure personality. Yet these quirks did not deter Reina. Soon enough, they moved in together. While some might have raised eyebrows at this union, even Reina's mother welcomed Victor into the family circle after hearing numerous stories about his difficult upbringing involving a strict father due to his mother's absence. Victor was born in 1987 and spent his early years with his father. The nature of their relationship is unclear, but it's evident that Victor learned to adapt to various circumstances, even those that were uncomfortable. While his appearance set him apart, no one in his surroundings considered him odd. From a young age, Victor avoided conflicts. He excelled academically and graduated with honors. However, financial constraints prevented him from attending university. As a result, he sought employment and soon secured an internship at a motorcycle repair shop. This experience ignited his passion for motorcycles. Over time, Victor purchased a Harley-Davidson motorcycle and became part of the motorcycling community. Despite leading a quiet and law-abiding life without even a parking ticket on his record, his appearance, including black clothing, eye makeup, painted nails, and occasionally white contact lenses, instilled fear in those around him. Rarely did he control, but there were moments when his darker side emerged. One neighbor recalled an incident where Victor caught a neighbor's chicken, slit its throat, and drank the blood directly from the wound. Victor and Reina took care of the children during weekends and sometimes on weekdays, giving the grandparents relief from their 3 noisy grandchildren. They observed that Reina's new partner was kind and attentive to the children. Moreover, Reina never complained about Victor, and they never seemed to quarrel, a fact that pleased her parents greatly. However, there was one unsettling piece of information. Victor had a 10-year-old daughter with a restraining order preventing him from approaching her. Reina's parents couldn't comprehend why the girl's mother would take such action. In an attempt to understand more about Victor, Reina's stepfather discreetly followed him on several occasions, but found nothing incriminating or unusual. Victor abstained from alcohol and illegal substances and was consistently either at home or at work, repairing motorcycles. He never behaved rudely towards the children, even when alone with them. In other words, despite any suspicions, he appeared to be a normal person. Reina's parents dismissed the restraining order as her birth mother's eccentricity and quickly settled down. The situation changed when the aunt, who had been caring for the youngest Angela, informed Reina that she couldn't continue looking after the girl. Around this time, Reina's mother began having health issues. Consequently, the grandchildren had to move from their grandmother's house to live with Reina and Victor. Suddenly, all 5 of them were crammed into a small apartment. However, favorable circumstances soon emerged. Reina was offered a new job with a higher salary. The reunited family then moved into a spacious rented house with several separate rooms. Their life seemed idyllic: spacious home, loving partners, and children with their mother. This appeared as a sign that everything was going well. But perhaps it wasn't entirely true. Reina soon lost her job, leading to financial troubles for the family. According to Victor's mother, she even had to provide financial assistance to the young couple because they lacked sufficient money for basics such as food and rent. Meanwhile, Raina's mother remained unaware of her daughter's struggles. On rare occasions, when Raina brought the children over to her mother's house, she would ask her to feed them well, a request her grandmother happily obliged. In addition to these financial problems, something strange and clearly unhealthy began happening in their relationship. Although Raina never complained to anyone about their circumstances or their relationship being far from normal, troubling signs surfaced shortly before tragic events unfolded. Victor appeared on the street one day with short cropped hair. It turned out that he and Raina had a severe argument the previous night, during which Raina cut off his long black hair while he slept as an act of revenge. Additionally, Victor admitted that Raina threatened to leave him with the kids if he didn't secure a good-paying job within a month. On Saturday, February 3, 2018, Raina her mother's house to pick her children, who had staying with their grandmother since Thursday. Raina's mother didn't notice anything unusual about her daughter's behavior. In fact, she was sociable and exhibited a normal mood. They even had the chance to chat over a cup of tea while the children packed their belongings. The next day, early Sunday morning, February 4th, Raina and her mother had a brief telephone conversation where they discussed current affairs and agreed to call each other later. Raina never contacted again after that. Despite numerous attempts to reach her through calls and many text messages sent to both her daughter and grandchildren, there was no response. The concerned woman called Victor as well, but he did not answer either. This silence and ignoring of calls continued for several days. Finally, on Wednesday, February 7th, Victor answered a call. He assured Raina's mother that everything was in order and promised that Raina would call back soon to explain everything in detail. He asked her not to worry and to wait for the call. However, the daughter never called back. It became clear to the parents that something terrible had happened. A day later, they received a call from law enforcement officers who informed Raina's parents of the horrifying details of what had transpired. Following his arrest, Victor Alexander immediately began to testify without hiding anything or expecting leniency. According to his account, he initially wanted to end his life, but then changed his mind, believing he should pay for what he had done. Thanks to his detailed testimony, authorities were able to almost completely reconstruct the sequence of events. On the morning of Sunday, February 4th, the two roommates had another significant argument in their shared bedroom. During this altercation, Victor struck Raina several times on her neck, chest, and stomach, which resulted in her death. He then locked her body in the room and asked Daniela, Raina's oldest child, to go to the store and buy him a pack of cigarettes. While Daniela was gone, Victor went into the children's room and strangled Raina's daughter with a necktie as she slept. When Daniela returned from the store, he did the same thing to her as he had done to her sister. Afterward, and tragically, he moved both children's bodies into the bedroom alongside their mothers. Back then, Raina shared that young Araman was playing quietly in the courtyard behind the house. Victor approached the boy and explained that his older sister had gone to the store and was running late. He told him he'd take him to their aunt's house and then go look for Daniela. Araman obediently followed Victor to Aunt Johanna Mendoza Coelho's house. Having left the boy there, Victor returned home with the intention of hiding the consequences of his actions. It appears he only realized upon returning that concealing the truth was impossible, and it would eventually come out. A few hours later, he retrieved Araman and informed his aunt that Daniela had been found and it was time to go home. At home, Victor took Araman's life by hanging him from a rung inside a closet. Victor claimed he committed this crime due to the difficult financial situation they were in, which he felt psychologically unable to cope with. Acquaintances confirmed that recently he had complained about family disagreements over money. Victor's mother informed investigators that financial difficulties had driven her son into despair, pushing him to commit such a grave act. The couple was already in a critical state, and their problem worsened over the weekend when they didn't get their expected paycheck. "I believe it was this situation, my son being a young man, being pressured for money by a woman and her children, that pushed him over the edge," said Mrs. Joanna Mendoza, aunt of the accused. However, the extreme brutality of the crime didn't align with pure mental illness. The preliminary autopsy report clarified things further. All female victims weren't just deprived of life, but also abused. An investigation by the public prosecutor's office revealed that victim Reina Isabel Encarna had frequently raised concerns via WhatsApp with the accused about inappropriate intimate acts towards Angela while she slept. In recent messages, Reina threatened her cohabitant with going to law enforcement if things didn't change. Reina's mother told police that although the detained young man had always treated the three girls well, he had a particularly special relationship with Angela. He frequently carried her in his arms, placed her on his lap, and often hugged and kissed her. He even gave her a special nickname, Señorita. Investigators believed that Victor had ended the lives of his family members not due to financial problems, but to conceal the wrongful acts committed against Angela. Forensic results confirmed that Reina, as well as the two girls, had been wrongfully abused. Nonetheless, experts couldn't determine whether these acts were committed before or after their deaths, as the bodies were in an advanced stage of decomposition. A psychiatric examination revealed that Victor suffers from antisocial personality disorder. This means he lacks both guilt and conscience. The heinous crime deeply outraged and shocked the entire Dominican society. The trial began in January 2019 and wrapped up in just 2 days. Testimony was provided by experts, forensic specialists, investigators, and various witnesses. A lot of information came from Victor's friends. Crystal, his best friend, mentioned that on the day of his arrest, he handed over all his social media passwords and his mother's phone number to her. To Crystal, it seemed like Victor was planning to end his life. Another friend stated that Victor confessed the crime to him in detail a few days before his arrest, but it was so horrifying that this friend took it as a joke initially. In general, everyone who had ever met or seen the accused was stunned by his actions, including neighbors, teachers, and co-workers. Victor's only childhood diagnosis was attention deficit disorder, ADD. However, according to his mother, this condition didn't cause any problems for either him or their family. 18 witnesses in total testified during the trial, including 2 forensic experts. At the trial, the latter provided such shocking details that even Victor's mother asked for the full weight of the law to fall on her son. She firmly stated, "Justice must be served. He must pay for everything he has done." In court, she pleaded with Reina's family to forgive her for such a son, and shared in their grief. Victor Alexander Futrell admitted guilt to taking the lives of Reina Isabel Encarnacion and her 3 children. He also offered an apology to the victim's family and the public for his crime. The man received the harshest sentence available within the Dominican Republic's judicial system at that time, 30 years. When sentenced, he was just 30 years old, meaning he could potentially leave prison and live out his remaining years in freedom under fortunate circumstances. This things prompted the National Congress to expedite updates to the criminal code. The country's legal system, established in 1844, does not include cumulative punishment for multiple crimes. Had the updated criminal code been in effect, Victor Alexander could have faced a sentence of up to 60 years for his crime. The shocking deaths of Reina and her children underscored the urgent need to update this law. Nonetheless, it can be said that justice prevailed as the perpetrator received the maximum sentence possible at that time. Reina's mother expressed satisfaction with the outcome of the case during various television programs. The case of Gabriela Alcaino. Teens' rejection leads to tragedy. Teenagers can sometimes display aggression towards their peers, behavior often dismissed as part of growing up, with hopes they'll outgrow it. Yet we sometimes overlook the severity of such actions, as a violent teenager can pose a serious threat to their surroundings. Moreover, This unstable age often coincides with first loves, and when those feelings are not reciprocated, it can lead to tragedies. Such was the case with Gabriela Alcaino, a schoolgirl whose story shocked not only Chile, where the tragedy took place, but all of Latin America, leading to the enactment of the Gabriela Law. The girl met a tragic end at the hands of her boyfriend, a fellow teenager. She had broken up with him due to his temper and controlling behavior. The boy didn't take it well, resolving the matter in the most drastic way. He assaulted and took the life of the girl to whom he had recently professed love. He also took the life of the girl's mother, who became an accidental witness. Family and friends of the victim later claimed the tragedy could have been avoided, as the suspect had been stalking and harassing his victim. He broke into her home, stalked her in various places, and threatened to take her life if she didn't return. Dozens of witnesses heard these threats, but no one imagined he would follow through. Who was Gabriela Alcaino? Gabriela Alcaino Donoso was born on May 17, 2001, in the capital of Chile, Santiago. She was the only child of Federico Alcaino and Carolina Donoso Campos, and the first grandchild in a large, loving family. Her paternal uncle Rodrigo became her godfather and doted on her, just as her grandfather Carlos saw her as the center of his universe. Gabriela grew up surrounded by love and care. Her family wasn't wealthy, but they belonged to the middle class, doing everything they could to provide Gabriela with a good life, a solid education, and a good upbringing. When she was only 5 years old, her parents decided to divorce. Gabriela lived with her mother, who didn't remarry and devoted herself to raising her only child. Her father soon remarried, and Gabriela gained 2 younger half-brothers. Despite his new family, Federico continued to support his ex-wife and daughter financially and stayed involved in Gabriela's life and upbringing. Gabriela was a kind, open, and friendly child. She was somewhat shy and modest, but this didn't prevent her from making friends and getting along with her peers. She had an angelic appearance, which elicited admiration and delight from all who knew her. Gabriela excelled at school, loved music and dancing, and was also good at drawing. Her parents did their best to nurture her talents. She adored her younger brothers, spending weekends and holidays at her father's house, which was nearby. Her childhood, overall, could be described as a happy and carefree time, surrounded by loving family members. First love. At 15 years old, Gabriela, like most of her peers, fell in love for the first time. The boy's name was Fabian Casares Aravan, a fellow student at her school who was only a year older. Their romantic relationship was initially innocent. They would walk hand in hand, eat ice cream at cafes, steal kisses, and generally appeared to be a happy couple. Fabian came from a respectable and intelligent family. His parents were well regarded and sought to provide him with a solid education and raise him to be a good person. However, Fabian himself was considered withdrawn and secretive, speaking to others reluctantly, avoiding direct eye contact, and always looking away. Given his non-confrontational nature, many assumed he was shy or had adolescent timidity, but it's more likely he suffered from social anxiety. Gabriela even introduced Fabian to her father, who approved of her choice, finding the young man calm, dependable, and rational. He had a serious conversation with the boy, asking him to take care of his daughter, and Fabian promised not to harm her or let others harm her. Initially, their relationship was harmonious, with Fabian genuinely trying to be attentive and caring. However, this harmony didn't last long. After a few months, his controlling and cruel side emerged. Cesare sought to control every aspect of Gabriela's life, exhibiting jealousy, deciding who she should and shouldn't associate with. He checked her phone, demanded immediate responses to his calls and messages at all hours, and when this didn't happen, threw tantrums. A young tyrant and tormentor. For the first 6 months of the relationship, Gabriela tried not to give too much importance to her boyfriend's outbursts of anger and jealousy. She was madly in love, tried to comply with all his demands, and naively believed that things would soon change, and her beloved would become the same sweet and caring boy who had recently won her heart. However, Fabian only grew more irritable, volatile, and aggressive. He began to wear Gabriella down emotionally, but over time, he stopped at mere verbal abuse. He might slap her, grab her hair, or her hands. In most cases, these actions didn't leave noticeable marks, but sometimes friends began to notice bruises on her wrists and shoulders, the places where Fabian had gripped her roughly and shaken her forcefully. Alcaino tried not to complain or tell anyone about what was happening, but her friends and family began noticing her depressed state and her eyes perpetually wet with tears. She was no longer the smiling, open, and sociable girl she once was, gradually distancing herself from friends, avoiding contact with those Fabian forbade her from speaking to. Repeatedly, Gabriella tried talking to her beloved, but to no avail. She also broke off their relationship several times, only to return under Fabian's pressure. This went on for over a year. Breakup, stalking, and threats. In the fall of 2017, Fabian found himself in trouble for attacking a classmate. Although the incident didn't occur at school, it wasn't clear what happened. He was accused of mistreatment and assault, facing possible jail time, but the case was settled out of court. Fabian was still expelled and had to complete his education through homeschooling. After this incident, Gabriella decided to end things with Fabian for good. However, he wasn't pleased. At first, he apologized, promised to change, and asked her to come back. But after her refusal, he began stalking, blackmailing, and threatening her if she didn't resume their relationship. Fabian lurked around Gabriella's school or home, even trying to climb into her room through the window. He called her dozens of times from different numbers, sent texts, voice messages, and social media messages, harassing Gabriella. His messages ranged from tearful apologies to threats, but Gabriella remained resolute in ending the relationship. Sometimes Fabian would disappear for a week or more, giving Gabriella hope he had moved on, but he'd reappear, terrorizing her and refusing to leave her alone. He followed her everywhere, like a shadow, and could show up at the most unexpected places, screaming and causing a scene. Gabriella grew fearful of being alone, always going places with friends or family. After school, she went to her mother's work, and they'd go home together. When she needed to travel, she asked her father or uncle to accompany her. This continued for several months, and Gabriella was exhausted, though she tried not to complain. The beginning of a series of tragic events. At the beginning of 2018, a terrible tragedy struck the Alcaino family when a burglar broke into the home of Federico's second wife and took her life. The children were at school, and Federico was at work, leaving her alone. The perpetrator, a previously convicted neighbor, was caught immediately. Gabriella and her mother did everything they could to support the grieving Federico and help him with the children. This tragedy temporarily distracted Gabriella from thoughts of Fabian, who disappeared during this period. Gabriella also focused on preparing for entrance exams, dreaming of becoming a student at one of the most prestigious universities in Santiago, with aspirations of studying journalism or advertising. However, the tragedy was just the first in a series of heartbreaking events for the Alcaino family. By May 2018, Fabian reappeared, beginning to stalk Gabriella obsessively. She felt unsafe everywhere, as her ex-boyfriend could climb over her home's fence or show up near her at the supermarket or mall. In early June, Gabriella sent her two closest friends screenshots of her messages with Fabian, along with some voice messages where he threatened her, demanding she resume their relationship. Gabriella admitted she feared for herself and her loved ones. However, she didn't tell her family about the stalking and threats to avoid worrying them. The last family celebration. On June 10, 2018, the Alcaino family gathered at grandfather Carlos's house to celebrate his 80th birthday. Sadly, this joyous family event turned out to be the last day of life for Gabriella and her mother, Carolina. The evening seemed happy and uneventful. The house was filled with laughter and music, and the large family enjoyed a big meal together, celebrating Carlos's milestone and wishing him good health and many more years. Gabriela played with her younger brothers and the children of her uncle Rodrigo, though she appeared somewhat troubled and distant. Her uncle decided to talk to her, asking if everything was all right and if anything was bothering her. Gabriela only gave a sad smile, shrugged, and said she was nervous without specifying why. The uncle chose not to press, thinking she'd share when ready, but later regretted this decision deeply. After the party, Federico drove his ex-wife and daughter home. He kissed Gabriela on the forehead, told her he loved her, and assured her she could count on his support in any situation. Then he returned home with his younger children. This was the last time he saw his eldest daughter and his first wife alive. A brutal crime. Around 4 a.m. on June 11th, Fabian, armed with a hunting knife, climbed over the fence of his ex-girlfriend's house. He intended to enter Gabriela's bedroom through the window and attack her, but suddenly the lights went on. The back door opened slightly, and Carolina appeared. She couldn't sleep and came to check on the noise. Fabian pounced on the unfortunate woman, pushed her back inside, and began stabbing her furiously. In total, he stabbed her 36 times, with most wounds landing on her chest, neck, and head, leaving her no chance of survival. Carolina managed only a couple of screams, but the noise woke Gabriela, who ran downstairs to find out what was happening. As she descended, she saw a bloodied and enraged Fabian, who caught and dragged her down. Gabriela held her phone, desperately trying to call emergency services, but couldn't. Fabian assaulted his ex-girlfriend, then stabbed her forcefully in the chest, piercing her heart. The single blow ended her life. He then moved her to the kitchen, where Carolina's lifeless body lay. He tried to erase his traces, wiping fingerprints and cleaning bloody footprints. He then washed himself and the murder weapon in the bathroom, and quietly left around 5:30 a.m., leaving the house unnoticed by neighbors. In the following days, he acted as though nothing had happened. The grim discovery and the first suspect colleagues began to worry when Carolina missed work for 2 days and didn't answer phone calls. She was responsible and wouldn't disappear without reason. Her boss contacted Federico to find out what had happened. Federico was shocked and tried calling Carolina, but her phone didn't answer, and Gabriela's was off. He called his brother Rodrigo, who hadn't seen or spoken to Gabriela or Carolina since they parted ways after Carlos's birthday. Federico then left work and headed to Carolina's house. The house seemed empty, but their car was in the garage. Federico circled the house twice, knocking on doors and peering through windows, but hesitated to go in, even though he had a spare key. He called the police, asking them to check the house. The officers, upon learning he had a key, wondered why he hadn't used it, but Federico expressed fear of what he might find inside. At 11 a.m., he opened the door and entered with the officers. They saw 2 lifeless bodies in pools of blood on the kitchen floor. Carolina and Gabriela had been dead for over a day, but Federico, overcome with grief, screamed for an ambulance, demanding someone save them. They calmed Federico, but his behavior aroused suspicion, and he was led outside to a police car for questioning. When he tried to leave the car and found the door locked, he demanded an explanation. Realizing he was now the main suspect in a double homicide, Federico was devastated. Federico couldn't understand how he could be suspected of taking his own daughter's life. Rodrigo soon arrived, and was also shocked that his brother wasn't released. He couldn't believe his niece was dead, asking why there wasn't an ambulance and why no one was trying to help. Both men were taken for questioning, and their alibis were thoroughly checked. Both were cleared, as they were with family at the time of the crime. Then, friends of the deceased were questioned, revealing that Gabriela had been stalked by her ex-boyfriend. They provided screenshots of his messages and voice recordings with threats. Easier to take her life than let her go. Federico recalled his daughter's obsessive suitor, whom she had tried unsuccessfully to break up with. He never imagined the seemingly pleasant boy Gabriela introduced to him could commit such a heinous crime. The police went to Fabian Cesares's house to investigate. After the double homicide, the young man lived a normal life, interacting with family and friends, visiting familiar places, and even posting a photo on social media, playing guitar at a party. When arrested on suspicion of murder, Fabian feigned surprise and grief, claiming he loved Gabriela and would never harm her. Fabian had disposed of the murder weapon and discarded some blood-stained clothes, but his shoes still had small drops of blood, and prints from his soles were found at the crime scene. Moreover, 4 of Gabriela's classmates testified that they had heard Fabian threaten her, shouting that it would be easier to take her life than let her go. Under pressure from evidence and witness testimonies, Fabian confessed to the crime but tried to portray himself as a heartbroken lover. He claimed he hadn't intended to harm Gabriela, only talked to her, but things escalated, and he dealt with her mother as an unwanted witness. Yet he couldn't explain why he brought a hunting knife just to talk. Will he get the minimum sentence? After the autopsy and necessary tests, the bodies of the victims were returned to their family for burial. Hundreds gathered at the funeral to honor the deceased and offer condolences to their loved ones. Gabriela was buried in the white dress she had dreamed of wearing, but never got the chance to. Carolina was laid to rest in a closed casket, as her face had been mutilated beyond recognition. Fabian's family hired a skilled lawyer who crafted a strong defense and promised a minimal sentence for his client. During preliminary hearings, he emphasized Fabian's youth and clean record, arguing that the attack on his classmate had been settled out of court. The victim's relatives pushed for a femicide charge, but it was denied by the prosecution, as Chile's law only applied it in cases where the victim and perpetrator were married or lived together. Since the teenagers hadn't been in a close relationship at the time of the crime, the case wasn't classified as femicide during the investigation. Additionally, the lawyer argued that Fabian acted impulsively and in a state of distress. Consequently, he faced a potential 15-year sentence for double homicide and assault. The Alcaino family, understandably, demanded the harshest punishment for him. After initial hearings, the judge allowed both prosecution and defense 6 months to gather evidence. Fabian's lawyer requested his release pending trial, but the judge denied this, keeping Fabian in custody. Gabriela's law. Gabriela's father was outraged. In a short span, he had lost 3 women close to him, all to violent deaths. Now, the person responsible for the deaths of his ex-wife and daughter might get away with a minimal sentence. The lawyer tried to shift the blame onto the victims, and the authorities seemed ready to accept this. So, Gabriela's father and uncle, together with women's rights organizations, developed a proposal for Gabriela's law, which would expand the definition of femicide to include romantic relationships, even if the perpetrator and victim weren't married or living together. They were soon joined by the National Office for Women and Gender Equality, which actively advocated for the law. The bill faced opposition, as the proposed amendments would mean that perpetrators already serving time for similar offenses could face new charges and lose eligibility for early release. However, feminist organizations across the country supported the Alcaino family, staging marches and demonstrations in favor of Gabriela's law. In late August 2019, a year and 3 months after the tragic murders, amendments to the femicide law were presented at the highest legislative level. Gabriela's law included 15 amendments, eventually approved by Congress. Now, in the Republic of Chile, femicide includes any violence, injury, or murder of a woman due to gender-based hatred, regardless of the relationship between victim and perpetrator. Furthermore, if the victim is a minor or has health issues, these are considered aggravating circumstances. Trial and fair sentence. The trial of Fabian Cesares took place in April 2022, 4 years after he attacked his ex-girlfriend and her mother. Following the adoption of Gabriela's law, the defense was powerless. Fabian was charged with femicide under aggravating circumstances due to one victim being a minor, as well as double homicide and assault. On April 20th, Fabian was sentenced to life imprisonment without the possibility of parole. After the verdict, Federico and Rodrigo addressed the court, thanking the judges for their fair decision. They acknowledged that no sentence could bring back their daughter and niece, but that a life sentence for the perpetrator would protect other women from the same fate as Carolina and Gabriela. Shafilea Ahmed was born on July 14, 1986, a British Pakistani girl. Shafilea's father, Iftikhar Ahmed, originally hailed from the Gujarat district of Pakistan. At the age of about 20 to 22, Iftikhar moved to Britain for employment. While staying there for a while and during work, Iftikhar falls in love with a foreign girl and marries her. Soon he becomes a father, but when he returns to Pakistan and informs his family about his marriage, they do not accept it. Then Iftikhar's family puts heavy pressure on him to marry another Pakistani girl. Despite Iftikhar's resistance, he eventually succumbs to his family's insistence and he marries a Pakistani girl named Farzana. After the marriage, Iftikhar returns to Britain and, after revealing the truth to his first wife, divorces her. Then, after some time, Iftikhar calls his second wife, Farzana, to Britain from Pakistan. After coming to Britain, Iftikhar starts living with his wife in the city of Bradford in West Yorkshire. It is here that on July 14, 1986, Shafilea Ahmed is born. Shortly after Shafilea's birth, the family moves to the town of Warrington in Britain. It is here that Shafilea completes her early education. During this time, 2 more daughters are born in the family, and Iftikhar's family grows larger. Although this family resides in Britain, on holidays, Iftikhar used to take his wife and all his children to Pakistan for vacation. Now the year had come, 2003, and by now Shafilea Ahmed had also turned 17 and was studying the law. Her dream was to become a lawyer. When Shafilea and the other children have a break on February 18, 2003, Shafilea comes to Pakistan with her family for vacation. During their trip to Pakistan, this family also participates in a family wedding ceremony. However, just a few days after this wedding, a major incident occurs with Shafilea. She accidentally drinks phenylfluorocleaner cleaner. Actually, phenyl is commonly used in Asia for cleaning floors in homes. Now, because phenyl is made by mixing some chemicals and soap, drinking it causes severe pain in Shafilea's throat. The reason behind Shafilea drinking phenyl is initially said to be because her parents pressured her into arranged marriage with a Pakistani boy. Because of this pressure, Shafilea drank the phenyl intending to end her life. But later, her parents claimed that someone had poured phenyl into an old bottle of water, kept in the same bottle usually used for drinking water, and in the darkness of the night, Shafilea mistook phenyl for water and drank it. Due to this mistake, Shafilea had to endure a lot of pain. As a result, she's admitted to a hospital in Pakistan. Now, because Shafilea's injury was quite severe, she has to stay in the hospital for a long time. During this time, the holidays of other family members also end, so Iftikhar takes his 2 children and wife back to Britain, while Shafilea has to stay in Pakistan for treatment. However, shortly after, Iftikhar arranges for Shafilea's return as well, and on May 27, 2003, Shafilea returns to Britain. Straight from the airport, Shafilea is admitted to a hospital for treatment through an ambulance. After several months of treatment, Shafilea's throat heals considerably, and now she rejoins college. Alongside college, she also starts a part-time job. But on September 18, 2003, a college teacher notices that Shafilea Ahmed hasn't been coming to college for the past week. Attempts are made to contact Shafilea via phone, but she cannot be reached. When teacher asked about this to Shafilea's parents, they revealed that Shafilea has not been home for the past week. Their daughter has been missing for a week, and her parents hadn't filed any complaints about her yet, which strikes Shafilea's teacher as very strange. Immediately after this, they inform the police. Upon filing the case, a police team arrives at Shafilea's house for investigation, and questioning begins with her parents. Shafilea's parents say that they last saw Shafilea at their home on September 11, 2003. and since then, she hasn't been seen. Upon this, the police ask, "When your daughter has been missing for a week, why haven't you filed a complaint with the police yet?" To this, Shafilea's parents respond, "This is not the first time Shafilea has been missing from home for a few days. It has happened several times before." To confirm this, when the police check the records, it is revealed that Shafilea has been missing from home several times in the past. The first time was when Shafilea was only 12 years old. She went missing with her younger sister on March 10, 1998. Because of this, her parents had also filed a missing report for both their daughters with the police. However, at that time, Shafilea returned home with her sister as evening approached. According to records, Shafilea ran away from home for the second time on November 25, 2002. Once again, her father, Iftikhar Ahmad, filed a missing report for his daughter. After extensive searching, Shafilea was found by the police sitting in a park. According to police records, for the third time, Shafilea left home with a friend on February 3, 2003. This time, Shafilea did not return home for 2 days, and then on February 5, 2003, she went to a safe house for orphaned people and filed a report against her parents for domestic violence and mental abuse. After the report was filed, the police officer spoke with Shafilea Ahmed and her parents, and after everything was cleared up, Shafilea returned home. After this, on February 18, 2003, Shafilea, along with her 2 sisters and parents, goes to Pakistan for a family function and disappears from there shortly after returning to Britain. Now, looking at old records, the police also suspect that Shafilea Ahmed may have gone somewhere again this time and will return home in a few days. Therefore, the police try to find Shafilea in all those places where she could have gone. However, even after a few days, the police cannot find any trace of Shafilea from anywhere. Considering Shafilea's history of running away from home before, the police show a little laziness in the investigation this time. After this, some local media start making an issue out of the police's laziness. As a result, demand for a thorough search for Shafilea increases at the local level. Due to the progress in the Shafilea missing case, the police accelerate their investigation. Subsequently, they discover numerous poems written by Shafia at her home. These poems reveal her dissatisfaction with her household environment. Her parents wished for Shafia to lead a traditional Pakistani girl's life, but she favored Western culture. Through her poetry, she expressed this pain. As Shafilea's poems reach the public, the case gains momentum, putting pressure on the police to find her. Consequently, law enforcement intervenes, intensifying their search efforts in places Shafilea could have visited. Eventually, CCTV footage confirmed Shafilea's identity to her parents, confirming that the girl in the footage is indeed Shafilea Ahmad. A few days after Shafilea went missing, her parents identified her. This made the police believe that at least Shafilea was alive. However, a new turn in the case occurs when the CCTV footage shows Shafilea's class teacher. Actually, when the picture is shown to Shafilea's class teacher, they say that the girl in the photo is not Shafilea Ahmed. Some other people also confirm by watching the CCTV footage that the girl in the footage is not Shafilea. Now, the police find it very strange that Shafilea's parents themselves did not recognize their daughter from the CCTV footage. The police had many questions in their minds, and to find the answers to those questions, they secretly installed some audio recording devices at Shafilea's home. The police were listening to everything that was happening in Shafilea's house through an audio recording device. According to the recording, one day Iftikhar is heard saying, "In Britain, if you kill 40 people and there is no evidence against you, then the law here can't do anything to you." Additionally, one day Iftikhar Ahmad is heard saying, "If the police collect DNA samples from inside the car, what could happen?" Furthermore, the audio recording device captures some suspicious conversations that lead the police to suspect that perhaps Shafilea's father had something to do with his daughter. Now, because the police start to doubt Iftikhar Ahmed, they use his audio recordings as evidence, and on December 18, 2003, the police arrest Iftikhar and his wife Farzana Ahmed, along with 5 other family members, on charges of murdering Shafileya and hiding her body. The police had arrested these people solely on suspicion. The police hoped that during the investigation, some concrete evidence would be found against these peoples. However, no evidence was found against any of the arrested persons, and eventually, the police released them all. It had been a year since 2004, and there was still no evidence in the case of Shafileya Ahmed. The police were engaged in efforts to locate Shafileya. Meanwhile, floods occurred in the famous Kent River, flowing from the Sedgwick area of Britain. When the floods were under control, the body of a girl were found in extremely poor condition on the banks of this river. The distance between the place where the body was found and where Shafileya Ahmed had disappeared was 70 miles. But still, the police have doubts whether this corpse could be Shafileya's. However, to confirm this, DNA samples are collected from the dead body and then matched with the DNA of Iftikhar and Farzana. In this case, a major twist occurs when a body washed away in the flood matches with the DNA samples of Iftikhar. This meant that the body washed away from the river was not someone else's but Shafileya Ahmed's, meaning in the search for Shafileya Ahmed, whom the police had been looking for the past year, now reaches the police itself in the form of a corpse. Now, the biggest question in front of the police was who and why murdered Shafileya Ahmed. However, even before the statements and actions of corpse's parents, there were doubts, and in 2003, these 2, along with 5 others, were arrested. Therefore, once again, Shafileya's parents are arrested and questioned. The trial of this case is also going on, but even this time, no allegations can be proven against them, which leads the police to release them again. However, after that, the police detain some other suspects and proceed with the investigation against all of them. But despite many efforts, the police cannot reach the murderer. As time passes, people slowly start to forget about Shafileya Ahmed's case. Shafileya disappeared in 2003, and now it was 2010. That is, it had been 7 years since Shafileya's death. By now, Shafileya's family had also moved on from the incident and had become busy with their daily lives. But then, on August 25, 2010, a major theft occurs at Iftikhar Ahmed's house. By now, Iftikhar Ahmed's family had already become the center of attention in the city due to their daughter's disappearance. Due to this, when theft occurs in this house, it starts making headlines on the front page of newspapers. But once again, this puts heavy pressure on the police. Despite working honestly, the police quickly get involved in the search for the thief. After many days of hard work, the police make a revelation that surprises everyone. Actually, the police arrest not someone else, but Iftikhar Ahmed's daughter, Alicia Ahmed, on charges of theft in the house. In fact, Alicia was Shafileya's younger sister. According to Alicia, she didn't get as much money from home as she demanded and needed. Because of this, she orchestrated the theft of her father's money at her own home. However, the police had solved the theft case very quickly. But the police spot an opportunity here and now. They start talking to Alicia about her sister Shafileya, who disappeared many years ago, and reopen the file related to the Shafileya case. In the initial conversation, the police suspect that Alicia knows something about the disappearance of Shafileya that the world is still unaware of. The police officers try to uncover what happened with Shafileya, but Alicia refuses to cooperate with them. However, the police then tell Alicia, "You have orchestrated a theft in your own house, which could lead to a long prison sentence for you. But if you can provide any information about Shafileya that nobody else knows, your sentence could be significantly reduced." Afterwards, when Alicia reveals some details to the police, everyone is left stunned. Alicia explains, "It was not someone else but my father, Iftikhar, and my mother, Farzana Ahmed, who had beaten Shafileya Ahmad in front of all of us sisters. Then our father put polythene on her face, and due to suffocation, she was dead. Then he placed Shafileya's body in his car and threw it into the distant jungle. However, due to the flood, the body drifted to the riverbank from the jungle." According to Alicia, Iftikhar and Farzana did not like their daughter's modern lifestyle at all. On the surface, Shafileya started falling in love with a boy, and when this matter comes to light, Iftikhar and Farzana quickly try to arrange Shafilea's marriage with their preferred boy. When the family goes to Pakistan for a family function, there is an attempt to forcefully marry Shafilea to a boy there. But Shafilea refuses to marry for this reason, and she consumes fennel. After that, her health deteriorates, and her marriage does not happen either. When Shafilea returns to Britain, her family members here also insist on arranging her marriage with a boy of their choice. But when Shafilea repeatedly refuses this marriage, her father gets angry, and at first beats Shafilea in anger and then covers her face with a polythene bag, and then due to suffocation, Shafia Ahmad dies here. But immediately after this disclosure, Alicia Ahmed becomes a government witness in the case. In exchange, she is assured a minimum sentence in the theft case. However, based on Alicia's statement on September 2, 2010, Farzana and Iftikhar are arrested, and then a case of their own daughter's murder is pursued against them. Both of them remain in jail for several months after the arrest. However, nearly a year later, on September 15, 2011, they are granted bail by the Manchester Crown Court. In the further investigation, the police gather some crucial evidence, and based on that evidence, the trial of this case begins in the Chester Crown Court on May 21, 2012. Initially, Farzana and Iftikhar continue to deny their involvement in their daughter's murder, but when Farzana begins to suspect that she is being framed for her own daughter's murder, she finally accepts in court on July 9, 2012, that Shafilea Ahmed's murder was not committed by anyone else but by Iftikhar Ahmed himself. In her statement, Farzana also reveals that she tried to stop Iftikhar, but instead, Iftikhar beat and threatened her family, saying, "If any of you ever talk about this to anyone, your fate will be just like Shafilea's." Now, 2 witnesses had testified against Iftikhar Ahmed. Besides, the police who gather evidence also indicate that it was Iftikhar Ahmed who murdered Shafilea, then threw her body far into the jungle. However, a natural disaster struck that area, and with the floodwaters, Shafilea's body drifted and reached the riverbank on its own. After a lengthy trial in August 2012, Farzana and Iftikhar are found guilty of murdering their own daughter and disposing of her body after the murder. They are then sentenced to 25 years each. It is also proven in court that this was an honor killing. Following this verdict, every year on July 14th, Shafilea Ahmed's birthday, the National Day of Memory for Victims of Honor Killings, is observed in her memory. So with this, the case of Shafilea Ahmed comes to a close. However, perhaps nature also desired that Shafilea Ahmed receive justice and her killers be punished. Therefore, albeit late, Shafilea's parents, her murderers, are also sentenced. If you appreciate our efforts, like and share this video. If you haven't subscribed, do so now. Thank you.